Louise Quinn saying, give it a break, Danny Murphy. What is the agenda against Granit Xhaka?
I don't know. A lot of modern footballers don't fit the prototype of what Danny Murphy's honest pro would actually have been back in the day. I mean, is it fair to say Danny Murphy played back in the day? Is he that old now?
Yes, he did.
Did he?
Well, although I did see Gary Lineker open match of the day saying that this time at the start of the decade, Danny Murphy was still a football player.
Yeah.
Which is remarkable to think that just 10 years ago he was
that
an actual
remarkable.
professional football player. It is crazy.
It feels like a long time ago Danny Murphy played football, does it?
Yeah. Danny Murphy's retirement is probably coming up at around 8 years at this point.
Right.
So that certainly makes me
think
feel
back in the day?
Like, I mean, I would have...
There's like now, football is like pre-VAR and post-VAR. You grew up in the pre-VAR era. Mm-hmm. You're like a grown adult. So the kids now will be like, did they have VAR in your day, Da? And you'll be like, what?
Well, this is my day. This is still my day.
No, I think...
yes, they did have VAR in my day. And then there was a pre-my day when I was a mere young one. And we didn't have VAR. But I'll be able to pass down those stories as well. I'll be able to live to tell the tale.
Yeah, okay, so you'll remember that pre-VAR era, the black and white and all that kind of stuff. It all merges, that's the thing. It's like pre-Premier League, you don't remember any of that stuff. But it doesn't really matter anymore because there'll now be like football before VAR and football after VAR, and VAR will be the point where everybody goes, no, there was no football before that. Those records don't count.
They really don't count.
Thierry Henry scored whatever, and it goes, he was offside for half of them, so they don't count.
Liverpool were the first football champions, it will turn out.
And that's it. And they'll be the only ones, maybe, for a while, the way things are going at the moment.
Perhaps.
Pep Guardiola is playing tonight against... he is not playing tonight, but his team are playing tonight against Manchester United. And this is one of those very understated build-ups to a Manchester derby. And yet, I mean, am I right? Maybe I haven't tuned in enough to the build-up, but it seems quite an understated... It's only the Carbery Cup, so maybe people don't care about it that much. But it has the potential to be shocking for both teams.
Possibly.
If this Man City team loses to Manchester United, this Man United team, over the two legs, like, WTF.
You know the way when something is a big deal these days, you're supposed to say, well, we've got the small deal of something coming up. Well, I heard them on Sky Sports this morning saying, well, we've got the small deal of United against City in the EFL Cup tonight. Yeah. I'm like, no, that doesn't work for the EFL Cup because it is the EFL Cup.
I know, but I love the League Cup. It's under lights, knockout football.
Two legs.
Not tonight, but yes.
If Manchester United win this, it is a big deal. Like Pep Guardiola, one of those people who would definitely remind you of how many trophies he wins in any given season. Given the Premier League is now off the table, you would imagine that he would also be going gung-ho for this. It's been kind of filtered through with the pre-match narrative on both sides, which is Solskjaer having a pop at Manchester City for their tactical fouling. You don't want to name names, but someone like Fernandinho, you would have thought is a world leader in that department. And then on the other side of the coin, you've got headlines this morning about Pep Guardiola saying he will never manage Manchester United and would rather play golf. Just like he says he would never manage Real Madrid. Like we were getting into kind of the sliding doors situation yesterday of if Ancelotti had actually become Liverpool manager. There was a similar situation, obviously, with Manchester United and Pep Guardiola post Alex Ferguson, but of course Bayern Munich swooped in, and that was the end of that particular thing. And you would wonder in what sort of different place they would be now. Manchester United. Perhaps it was always going to be a difficult place, and perhaps Pep Guardiola's legacy would be a little bit tainted by succeeding Ferguson.
It's so stupid that Manchester United don't have either Guardiola or Klopp as their manager, when they could clearly have had both if they wanted it. And it's a clear indication that the club's being barely managed by the Glazers, who are like, oh, we have this thing over there, it's pumping out money, what do we need to do anything about it for?
Like it's true. Like when you go back, I don't think it's too much hindsight being used to suggest that these two guys would have been fantastic options for everybody involved. Now, I know Arsenal tend to get into the mix with the, oh God, we missed out on Jurgen Klopp story as well, but they held on to Arsene Wenger for a little bit too long. For Manchester City, or for Manchester United rather, like they'd made that move much earlier. They got rid of Alex Ferguson, had got rid of himself from Manchester United much earlier than that. There was a succession plan that even if David Moyes was going to become the stopgap for a certain amount of time, you still had these two top-class managers working abroad, and he might have become available at some point down the line. That perhaps they just needed to wake up and admit that David Moyes was not going to ever see out his, 6-year contract or whatever it ended up being in the end. That actually he was always going to go through a tough time, and then in their minds, picking the successor to Moyes is what they needed to do, but actually they thought that Moyes was going to become Ferguson 2.0.
With no evidence.
With no evidence.
It made no sense.
It really didn't. And
there was a great line yesterday from Mike Carlton in the middle of his piece where he was like, what he really wants to do is pick up Marcus Mariota, who's been cast aside by the Tennessee Titans, and prove that he can do this without Tom Brady. And I think that, and it's like, oh, maybe that's not really what he wants to, that's not how he's thinking. That's exactly how he's thinking. And exactly how Ferguson was thinking was, I'm going to put Moyes in here and you can all see what it's like without me.
There's definitely an element of truth in that. Another thing, like...
There's nothing other than truth in that. That's the 100% thing. It was like, he's not going to let somebody like Klopp come in or Guardiola. No way. They might do better. What if they did better? What if they won back-to-back Champions Leagues or rattled off 2 Champions Leagues in 4 seasons that it took Ferguson 26 years to win?
The identity of managing Manchester United is being Scottish, it turns out.
Here's Pep Guardiola, right? Who... I think he has a love-hate relationship with golf, if I'm not mistaken. Certainly, he came very late to the sport, as far as I know. But here he was asked about, you know, that Man United thing that Graham said he really wanted to. He was heartbroken when he didn't get the gig, right? So have a listen.
After training City, never would train United. It's like I would never train Madrid.
Definitely not. Whatever happens in the future. It was the only offer.
I will be in Maldives if I don't have offers.
Fair enough.
But in Maldives, no, because no golf courses. But
all right, so the correct was I'll be in the Maldives, but no, not the Maldives. They have no golf courses.
So he's got to pick somewhere else that does have actual good golf courses.
There's a business opening first week. Go to the Maldives and set up a golf course.
Golf, it seems like something very, very dangerous. So that is a good idea. The golf seems like something very dangerous to a man like Pep Guardiola, the obsessive that he is. He presumably looks at things like video games and says, I'm never touching that for fear that I get addicted to something like that. I would assume golf has the same stranglehold on him whenever he gets a time.
Sorry, but the Shangri-La, which is obviously like one of the nicest hotel groups in the world, has a golf course in Sri Lanka, in the Maldives. So,
but it's just one. You need multiple ones if you're going to be Pep Guardiola.
He would master that one so quickly.
Like, where do you go next if you are a man with Pep Guardiola's gifts?
I'm scrolling through the pictures of the Shangri-La in
It's pretty nice.
In Maldives.
I'm not going to lie, everyone, it's pretty nice.
It looks really good.
That is the most turquoise I've ever seen the colour turquoise.
Oh, their lives are so ridiculous, aren't they?
They really are.
Where do you go? I don't know. What do? You go back to Barcelona for one last fling with Messi and you try and win the Champions League that you all know you need to make your career have reached the true level of fulfillment that your talent and domination in football allowed it. Like, they don't have enough Champions Leagues. They need more Champions Leagues to be considered to have fulfilled their potential. They're obviously going to be the greatest footballer and he's the greatest manager and that was the greatest team, but they need more Champions Leagues. It's a results business. It's a cliche because it's true. You need those teams to have achieved more and he needs to achieve more and he needs to win the Champions League with Manchester City this year. All this, I don't have enough resources, bollocks.
Has he said that?
Loads of times.
He certainly complained around this time of year about what the calendar tends to do to his players. But you're right, Lionel Messi has made no secret about the fact that he desperately wants one last Champions League medal. And maybe it's not one last one, perhaps he wants to win a couple more. But he's hungry for that now. He doesn't care about La Liga anymore. And maybe he is also pining for Pep Guardiola's return. And maybe he believes that he is the man who could bring it back to the new camp. So I don't know, that's a decent shout. That's what Pep could go and do. But I often wonder where does the man get his fulfillment after that? If he goes back to Barcelona and wins again and gets that, he has all the money in the world. He's not going to have the allure of big clubs in Asia or wherever the money will be in 5-10 years time. He kind of itched the scratch in New York for a while. He mentioned the Maldives. The Maldives was just a strange suggestion from someone like Pep Guardiola. I could easily see Pep Guardiola just popping up in a hostel somewhere in the world and travelling around.
I think that he has rope-a-doped everybody with that whole notion of him. I think if you read about Pep Guardiola getting the Barcelona gig, it was done at a 3-star Michelin-starred restaurant in Barcelona. He is a bon vivant. He is living in penthouses. He is not youth hostling and slumming it with, he's not backpacking in Thailand.
Let me rephrase.
He's flying over in a private jet, getting a private tour of all the sites and then having a private beach. Pep lives well. Pep spends his money. He's not
I had forgotten about the whole penthouse addiction that Pep Guardiola tended to pick up in New York City. But there is still appearances to be kept up. There is Instagram and an Instagram account to be opened yet by him. Like you post the photos of you in Cambodia with your backpack on, and then you stay in a 5-star hotel afterwards.
Then you hand the backpack back to your servant, and
then you drive off in the tuk-tuk.
You get a little spritz and a wipe, and you go, okay, thanks very much, right, done.
And then you fly private on to your next destination.
Yeah, no tuk-tuks.
No, that's. I meant for the person who's carrying his bag, or that unfortunate person. But yeah, that's him. That's Insta Hun Pep Guardiola.
Yeah, look, there's loads going on, so let's tell you what's coming up on the show today, and we'll get into it because the papers are full of some big news this morning. 42 minutes past 7 here on OTB AM this morning. I hope you're listening to us on OTB Sports Radio. The sports page is coming your way 7:40, talking Gaelic football with Killian Clarke, who up to now has been a Cavan footballer, but who's on a year out. We talked to him about why that's happening. Joey Carbery is out for, it looks like, potentially 3 months with a tendon injury in his wrist. He's had surgery or will have surgery on that. Details coming through from his own Instagram account last night, and also confirmation from Munster, but it looks like he's in doubt for maybe the entire Six Nations, but certainly gone for the start of it. Tadhg Kennelly is going to join us at 8:45 to talk to us about Mickey Harte's comments about former GAA players acting as agents on behalf of the AFL, luring young Irish Gaelic footballers to Australia for, fame and fortune and a bit of sunshine in their lives. And going to do Deal or No Deal coming your way at around about 9:15. Also going to try and catch up on the FAI story, which leads the back page of the Daily Mail, which we'll get into now in the papers.
OTB AM.
Yeah, so the two big stories, both on the back page of the Irish Daily Mail this morning. Carbery blow, Munster go into key tie without influential star, so we'll get to that in just a second. And the FAI set for bailout and arrival of directors. This is Philip Quinn, who seems to be the only person who has this morning. The FAI's 18 million bailout is set to be revealed this week, as well as the identities of the new independent directors. It says that a provisional agreement has been reached between the FAI and its senior stakeholders, the government and the banks. UEFA, who are owed 25 million by the FAI, are supportive of the deal, which means the FAI, with debts close to 70 million, can keep trading. So they're saying that they'll continue as a member of UEFA. League of Ireland clubs can continue to compete in European competition, but job losses are expected at the FAI. There is no financial aid earmarked for League of Ireland clubs under the terms of the bailout. The FAI board is to welcome 4 outside directors almost 7 months after the governance review has made up its recommendation. And then the chief executive, it's obviously a new chief executive is going to be a priority, but I don't think the chief executive is going to be one of those 4 independent directors. Yes, it's going to be very interesting to see exactly what happens and what the terms of this bailout are. It always looked like the government were going to have to step in. A bailout is something where you come in and you guarantee. It's not where you go in and you give money free gratis and for nothing. You've got to get that money back. That's what that deal is. Over a long period of time, you turn it into a properly trading organisation, and some of it you turn into grants, if that's what needs to be done, but the rest of it you expect to get back.
Is the 18 million euro going to be a reasonable bailout then, is the big question you'd have?
Well,
is it too much to ask at the moment from the FAI?
Well, the business plan that was presented, which Shane Ross was blabbing about in the committee in the immediate aftermath of meeting the FAI, he's like, I'm not sure if this is a credible business plan at all, but like that's the business plan that they have to back, and that's the one that they have to bail out, and that's the one that Paul Cook was putting together. And in fairness, like, they had just got their teeth into it. This is obviously a crisis scenario where they're trying to fix things. So let's wait and see exactly what the terms of the deal are and what the terms of the bailout are, and hopefully all that stuff is made public so people can begin to say, yeah, I think this is fair, or that's not fair, or this needs to happen, and that the stakeholders, the grassroots and the legitimate stakeholders all get an opportunity to voice their opinion on it.
It's interesting how Shane Ross has gone about the last couple of days. Obviously, we expect movement on this probably tomorrow, really. Like we could see 4 independent directors, or maybe Thursday. But obviously, pre-Christmas, you had the faux pas in the Oireachtas committee about League of Ireland clubs and not knowing the future of the League of Ireland clubs if the FAI were to go bust or to go out of business entirely. And then he met, I think, like 40 League of Ireland's delegates then last week rather, to, like, I'm not sure, was it to make amends for it, or is it to almost hear them out, or almost to educate himself on what the grassroots football people need and what all the different stakeholders require and what they're all thinking. So perhaps that was a bit more of an encouraging sign. And another thing I've noticed how kind of tight-lipped everyone is around the identity of these 4 independent directors. There hasn't been any re-leak, has there?
I think one of them has said he's a candidate. According to John Fallon today in The Examiner, Cork native Jerry McEnany is the only contender to so far publicly declare his intention to run for the vacancy. Oh no, sorry, no, that's not the independent director. That's a replacement of outgoing president Donald Conway, who will come from a restricted field. So he's running for president. Sorry, incorrect. Yeah, there you go. So yeah, you're right. No leaks as to who the independent directors might be.
Be interesting to see it. Like they haven't named it either, which day it is, because I know reading last week it was supposed to be early next week. So I was kind of thinking today, but I presume it'll be tomorrow, the day after. I'm sure there will be some sort of movement, and the details will start to come out over the next couple of days. The back of the Sun this morning, that's that Pep Guardiola story. Clubbed, I'd rather play golf than be United boss. And 1-0 to the Arsenal. That is Reece Nelson celebrating his scrappy winner for Arsenal last night. And Ant case is closed. Spurs and the police have found no evidence of alleged racism towards Antonio Rudiger, and wrist KO for Joey. Joey Carbery has been dealt another injury blow and will need surgery on a wrist problem.
Say it ain't so. Joe is the front of The Examiner this morning. Ireland and Munster rocked by Carbery wrist injury, and so they've got a couple of pages on that. And then when you start to get into it, the number of games that Joey Carbery's played in the last 16 months is not great. But also, who's going to be fit to play out half at this stage? Scannell might start.
Ben Healy is the only fit, really, kind of out half that Munster have in their ranks, and given he's never played a Champions Cup game as far as I'm aware, it would be up to Rory Scannell to perhaps move in from his usual position of inside centre to 10.
Tyler Blendell remains absent with a neck injury. JJ Hanrahan is still recovering from a hamstring injury picked up in the middle of the festive fixture against Leinster. Munster say Hanrahan's rehabbing well, but it remains to be seen if he's going to be fit to start. So Rory Scannell to switch from centre to out half, and then Ben Healy, they could throw him in at the deep end. I mean, maybe that's exactly what happens, and that's a baptism of fire for somebody who's played for Ireland at under 20. So it's not like it's going to be the first big game of his career, but it would certainly be season on the line away in Paris. Very difficult to expect somebody with that lack of experience to be able to run the game the way you need to. But this is like the team aren't playing well, and then you have this extra injury crisis on top of everything. Maybe the team aren't playing well because there's an injury crisis, and it's unfair then to throw the brickbats that have been thrown. But at the same time, you know, in studio yesterday, Alan Quinlan was very strong when he was saying that he didn't feel like the forwards were just good enough at the moment, which is pretty black and white. It's a binary thing. You're either good enough or you're not.
Around this time last season, I can't remember, was it before or after Christmas? I think it was after Christmas, obviously, that game at Kingsholm when Joey Carbery puts through that magnificent grubber kick for someone to finish off a try, and you think to yourself, right, Joey Carbery's Munster career is finally here. And it's been the year from hell for Joey Carbery, really. Like, you think about it, he's only back 2 weeks ago from that ankle injury. The World Cup was obviously a complete disaster for him because of the damage he'd done to his ankle in the Italy game beforehand, and then coming into play a little bit and then getting knocked out again a little bit to be injured for Munster as soon as he came back from Japan. Then like last season, it was his hamstring issues that really kind of tripped him up, and he missed a lot of the end of the season. He missed that Saracen semi-final, for example, in the Champions Cup. And then when he had just made his real breakthrough in around, I suppose it was 15, 16, he then gets his start against Fiji in November 2017. Did he break his arm on that occasion? Like, it's just been so many bad luck stories for Joey Carbery at this point. 24 years old. You have to say the injuries are hampering his career and holding him back. And it's the heartbreak story for Irish rugby really over the last 12 months. You can sort of take the disappointment in the Six Nations and in the World Cup, but to see a young man's career being stalled by bad luck time and time again, this is a training ground injury. It's heartbreaking for him. Yeah,
it did not happen in the game. Did it not happen at the end of the game? I wasn't sure. But it is, like, and there's nothing you can say. You just hope that this is something that he works out, that this surgery comes back and the rest of his body is fine. And, like, they're not. So if it was just one chronic thing, if it was just, you know, the terrible situation Tyler Blendell finds himself in with a neck injury that continues to happen and happen and happen, you just hope that this settles down and then he goes and has 3 or 4 years in a row where nothing happens to him. But
that has to be, like, I guess that is the positive spin on it. All right, there isn't one recurring element here. There are a lot of little bits and pieces, but this should have been the year where Joey Carbery put down a lot of game time at 10 in the red jersey. Like, people will say, Leinster fans especially will say, that one of the reasons why he went to Munster was to rack up game time. He was never going to get enough game time in the big games with Johnny Sexton there in Dublin. And unfortunately, his body's just let him down in terms of actually getting those big minutes on a regular basis over the last 12 months.
It's 7:52 this morning here on OTB AM, the back page of the Herald. We're still the biggest. Solskjaer turns up heat ahead of cup clash with city rivals. Well, how do you define which of these two clubs is the biggest at the moment? Is it, I mean, what number of supporters worldwide, I suppose, would be the thing? In which case, it's not even close, right?
Total titles ever? Premier League era, maybe? This decade?
Best team right now? Who has Pep Guardiola?
Like, so maybe, okay, so...
Which of your owners are you happier about their...
Put yourself back in the shoes of...
they're running the club and their reasons for investing?
Like, put yourself back in the shoes of the post-VAR supporter.
Yeah.
So pretend you're a teenage kid again.
You, basically.
Thank you very much. Who are you supporting? Who are you picking up?
City.
You're scrolling through FIFA.
Yeah.
You don't see who owns the team when you're scrolling through FIFA.
No, you're like...
All you see is...
Aguero.
Yeah, and you see like Raheem Sterling doing a 360 twirl in a nice sky blue kit, and you're like, I like that team. 5 stars on FIFA. Whereas Manchester United, like, I don't know, maybe out of touch kids, but they could be down to a 4 out of 5 star team right now in FIFA. I don't quite know.
Well, ever since your FIFA Farrago, when you didn't pick Messi in your team, yeah, I can see why you would have rejected the entire thing, but yeah, they're probably 4.5, I guess, are they?
I just don't know. The short answer is that
still 5 at the minute, we're told.
If you're impressionable,
Alex knows.
If you're impressionable, and
he is actually a teenager,
a student of the post-VAR world, then you're probably picking Manchester City to support. But is that the correct thing to do? I think Manchester United, in the long run, would probably give you a more fulfilling life. Back page in the Irish, not that fulfilling life, that being said. Back page of the Irish Independent is Carbery, Six Nations in doubt after fresh setback. Luckless playmaker set for another spell as Munster and Ireland face out-half crisis. We need to be protected from City's fouling, insists Solskjaer. I mentioned that a moment ago. Solskjaer stoking the pre-match mind games with Manchester City by claiming his United side have become a target of frequent tactical fouling and call for more protection. And that is Reece Nelson celebrating his winner for Arsenal last night.
The back page of the Times, Saracens may be forced to offload stars. No shit. I mean, this is what happens when you break the salary cap. You have to sell some of your players or release them. But yeah, eventually, because everybody's like, oh, Saracens obviously found guilty, fined loads of money for breaching the salary cap, but they seem to have all the same players and the same money. How does that happen?
What is the actual punishment here?
The conclusion was they were still breaking the salary cap. So eventually, here we are, what are we, January 2020, the 7th. Saracens may have to jettison some of their star players in the coming weeks to comply with the Premiership salary cap rules. I mean, why did they have to do this at the start of the season? In a dramatic change of approach, Edward Griffiths, the interim chief executive, suggested that contrary to previous statements made by the club, Saracens would quickly have to trim their wage bill by offloading players or implementing wage cuts. That's a good way of getting everybody to have some wage cuts for like 6 months, and then they all go in the summer after they've won the European Cup. I wonder, could they bonus them?
Not a bad shout.
Do you know?
All of a sudden,
we got to cut your salary to here, and then we'll find a bonus from somewhere to win the European Cup.
Avoiding relegation bonus in the Gallagher Premiership.
Yeah.
That'd be the way to give that money back to whatever the businesses are that were being paid by that money.
Liam Williams is returning to Scarlet at the end of the season, but it was reported by the Rugby paper on Sunday Williams may be allowed to return immediately. This is the kind of deal by which Saracens could reduce their wage bill. Send
Owen Farrell to Munster, get him in the 10 jersey for the weekend.
Yeah, it'd be great, wouldn't it?
Offload some of those wages, is what I say.
Yeah.
Back page.
Can he play for his dad?
I would like to think so.
Just for, like, this Six Nations to ease the transition.
It's the classic your dad rule that applies in rugby by all accounts. The front page of the Irish Times sports pages leads with Reece Nelson's goal. Nelson edges Arsenal past Bielsa's promotion hopefuls, and I'd rather play golf than manage United. That is Pep Guardiola's comments.
I don't believe him. He'd much rather manage United than play golf. There's no golf course in the world that Pep would love more than managing Man United.
Does Solskjaer not look like the type of guy who's just desperate for a game of golf right now?
Yes, he does. He looks wan, jaded, like he's not sleeping.
It looks like, yeah, it's as if something is constantly rattling and inside his head and constantly waking him up every single night. He does look like he's lacking sleep. Pep Guardiola looks like a healthier man. Randolph set to rejoin West Ham is some of the other news here as well, which you may have seen over the last couple of days. Fulham to face Hull City, that is from the FA Cup draw, and as already mentioned, investigation finds no evidence of alleged racism against Rudiger. Also mentioned here, Cristiano Ronaldo scored a second half hat-trick to lead Serie A champions Juventus to a 4-0 win in Serie A yesterday.
There are two rugby stories, just very briefly. Owen Slot is asking, can we start to trust Saracens again? I mean, that's very quick forgiveness, isn't it? I understand that we live in an accelerated culture where, like, all sorts of things can happen in politics, and then the next day another story happens. You're like, oh, what was the thing that we were all supposed to be angry about Boris Johnson for? I can't even remember that. And then he wins in a landslide. But, like, you know, the real world is supposed to take a little bit slower. Let me see Saracens prove that they're actually obeying the rules, as opposed to, you know, telling everybody they're about to obey the rules. And then Worcester Lock has operation to restore full feeling in limbs. This is a pretty horrific story. The Worcester Warriors lock, Michael Fatialofa, had surgery last night to relieve pressure on his spinal cord, having suffered a neck injury during his side's Premiership game away to Saracens on Saturday. He's 27, and he had significantly reduced feeling in his arms and legs in the intensive care unit at St Mary's Hospital in Paddington in London. He was awake before the surgery. No broken bones, but bruising and swelling to the spinal cord. And the decision was taken yesterday to operate with the aim of restoring function to his arms and legs. So the notion of him playing rugby again doesn't seem particularly important, but the notion of him actually having use of his arms and legs, like, it's always there in rugby, isn't it? It's always there, that horrific fear that somebody can have a life-altering injury just for playing the sport that they do for entertainment, for our entertainment.
Yeah, that is certainly a grim story this morning. Back page of the Mirror is Reese is the word. Nelson strike settles Arsenal nerves, but Lacazette's so lucky not to see red. Carbs is wrist off. Meanwhile, that's in relation to his injury. Angry boss Ole says, protect my men from fouling City. And Pep says, I'd never coach United.
Man tricky. Is that it? Is that the headline of the day? Ole cries foul to ref over City tactics. He says that they, they foul and foul and foul and foul again.
Reese is the word is tab of the morning to you.
What?
Reese is the word is obviously tab of the morning to you. Is it not? Is it better than man tricky?
What's Reese is the word?
Grease is the word, is it not?
Grease is the word?
Is it? I don't know.
What?
I don't know, to be quite honest with you.
Where's it come from?
Is it not a Grease reference?
As in the musical Grease?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Have you seen it?
No.
I haven't seen it in a long time.
I mean...
Now I've kind of like waded into waters that I needed to have a lot of backup for.
If it was Grease Lightning, I would be like, okay, I get that.
But see, I was hoping for that this morning and nobody went for it.
Reese Lightning.
But like, no, there is no Reese Lightning this morning.
Look at this, back page of the Star. What is it? Reese Lightning.
Have a morning to you. At long last, it's right there.
Clark Hart's claims comical. So Marty Clark insists he had nothing to do with Colin McShane's potential transfer to Aussie rules. Clark was responding to comments by Tyrone boss Mickey Harte, who said he was saddened that former GAA players were wooing rising and current stars on behalf of the AFL. So Marty Clark was on the BBC last night and he was interviewed and he was asked, look, everybody knows, well known that you're involved with the AFL. Mickey Harte didn't name anybody in particular. Did you take it as a personal slight? He's like, no, I didn't take it as a personal slight, but it's comical to suggest that it's a free shot for these, or a free gamble for these clubs. Clubs have to spend loads of money on flights. More difficult to get somebody from a different culture to come in who has never played with this particular type of football, and that costs loads of money. So loads of clubs don't even come to Ireland looking for players because they figure that it's going to be too difficult for them. And he said he'd never even spoken to Cathal McShane, had admired him from afar, but that was it. And that the Adelaide Crows had thought about this all on their own. So a war of words has broken out between Mickey Harte and some of the AFL recruiters, which might happen a little bit later on in this show. It's 8:01, but Tadhg Kennelly is going to be with us around about 8:45 this morning.
Just a couple of the other papers to finish off this morning. The Guardian leading with the cricket. They also have that story as well. Police end inquiry into alleged abuse at Tottenham. And back page of the Racing Post is thin blue line. Cup holders can claim narrow advantage in first leg at Old Trafford. And it is Reece Nelson on the Daily Telegraph. Nelson sees Arsenal home. Young Gunners seals their win.
And the last one for now is the Irish News this morning. Ricey critical of new rules and timekeeping. Earn boss baffled by ref calls in Antrim loss. So Ryan McMahon's going to be interesting. Hopefully he's free speaking as the Fermanagh boss and feels like he has an opportunity to get out there and influence the general thought. Gunners salute. That's David Luiz. If we can stick that one back up for 1 sec. Sorry, yeah, it's David Luiz. Obviously giving the old thumbs up. David Luiz has a future there. And Clark, Harte's AFL scouting assessment, comical. So on the back page of the Irish News, obviously the GAA community in the north are going to be waking up, reading that and seeing two high-profile stars going at it. Mm-hmm. Which is exactly what we want in the off-season, right?
It's exactly what we want. It's a great January story. Also have Ray Connellan in a lot of the newspapers today saying going to the AFL is the best thing he's ever done.
So he went out for 2 years, played for Collingwood or Essendon, I can't even remember now, it was one of those two, and then came back, played football in America for the summer and is now in UCD, and as soon as the Sigerson wraps up, he's going to be back with Westmeath. And like, I don't know, as a Kildare supporter, when players went over, you were like, well, they're going to come back fully conditioned into the lifestyle of full-time athletes. They're going to know exactly what the demands are, what the rigours are of that type of training, and hopefully they're going to be better for it. That was, like, beyond the initial human thing of wishing them well and hoping that they succeed because they are young Irish people going abroad and doing what, you know, literally tens of millions of Irish people have done since the famine, emigrate in the hope of a better life. You go, yeah, you go off and you go and you have the time of your life. That's what I think about these things.
Mm-hmm. Like I think it's fair enough, but I think it's also fair enough for a manager to be a bit disappointed when they lose a player. But I think perhaps the wide scale.
But how selfish is that? How selfish is it that your immediate reaction is, I've lost a player? How narcissistic is it to put yourself at the centre of a story as opposed to hoping that this young person actually goes off and has a much better life than the small life that they were living where you were their boss and you were the only thing that had the influence over them? How narcissistic do you have to be to put yourself at the centre of a story like that?
Probably quite a bit, but I think that any person, no matter who you are in that situation, eventually gets around to the situation of, right, okay, I've lost my best forward, bit of disappointment, we will move on, and things move on, and like Tyrone will be fine, that they won't be as good without Colin McShane if he does manage to make his move happen to the AFL. But just on the final point on this, like you were talking yesterday about how generally you go down there and you come back a better human and perhaps a better athlete as well. Like a couple of horror stories are often thrown around, like Tommy Walsh and I think Kieran Sheahan had a bad injury as well. But the AFL aren't deliberately breaking cruciates. Like, I mean, that is things that happen as a result of being a sports person, as a full-time sports person. I guess it is an occupational hazard of playing any sport. It could easily happen when the fixtures calendar is insane in the GAA.
It also suggests that the only identity Tommy Walsh has is his hamstring. That the only part of him that matters in the real world is his hamstring, as opposed to the life experience that he had as a person, the personal growth and development and opportunities that he had. Like, look, maybe he had a horrific time because of the hamstring, but I don't know that. I know that he went down and played well and had a career for a long period of time and then came back. Like
there's something is more important than the health of the leg that'll be swinging over points in the championship for your county when you come back.
And winning All-Irelands. Loads of stuff is more important than winning All-Irelands, especially for these people. And we're going to talk about that after the next ad break. As we mentioned, Tadhg Kennelly's with us before 9 o'clock this morning, so we'll get back into that. Killian Clarke's going to be with us to talk next about why he's stepping away from Gaelic football in 2020. First, though, here's Kieran Donaghy on last night's Off the Wall talking about what impact the attacking mark might have on the AFL scouts looking at the GAA.
I wouldn't say it makes the transition as a player easier, but I think it makes the scouting of players, a bit easier. But I will say one thing: I think the mark will be used very different in GAA than it will in Aussie rules. There's a lot more 50-50 balls in Aussie rules that are put in around the house than I think you'll see in the GAA in the upcoming years. But it wouldn't surprise me in a few more years that people start actually going more route one in around the house and see if they can win a ball because it's an automatic point. But, you know, the code, the crossover between both codes has always been there because of the way the games are played. There is tweaks here and there, of course, but definitely bringing the mark in will make it easier for scouts that are looking at players like Colin McShane, a young player that they say could be a star down under, to come in with a contract offer and take a punt on them.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station. Off the ball.
If Keane was managing Pogba, he'd never sleep. Pogba's a social media star, right? He appeals to the young people now. He does his dance, he has his hair and all that. That's all he's worried about, in my opinion. He's not worried about being a great player, Nathan.
Off the ball. Weeknights from 7 and weekends from 1. OTB AM.
Okay, 7 minutes past 8 here this morning on OTB. I'm delighted that we've got Killian Clark with us in studio, who is not currently a Cavan footballer, but you're not a former Cavan footballer. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So I've decided probably just to step away for a year, maybe. I call it maybe a sabbatical, if you want to call it that, Yeah. I wouldn't call it retirement all the same, so just for a while and just take a step back. And
how old are you?
26.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when are you 27?
September.
Okay,
September.
So and when did you decide to do this?
I decided to do it. I was away. I was on holidays actually just before Christmas. I was away in Dubai and I did a bit of travelling in Thailand as well. And I had a good time to kind of think of it over that period. And I came back and I kind of made the call after that, It wasn't an easy decision to come to all the same.
Had it been in the back of your head for a couple of years?
I definitely was. Not a couple of years, I'd say. I probably had reservations probably the year before. And then when I got in training and that, I was kind of the hunger kind of came back, and it was I was back enjoying it, But then when I came back in this year, I probably stumbled through a club championship with my own club, Shercock, in the senior championship this year, and then going back into Cavan, October, November time, I wasn't enjoying it, and I couldn't really justify the commitment levels there,
You were back training in the pre-season and went away on holidays and came back and went, okay, I've had enough.
Yeah, no, I did. I had, we'll say, a bit of testing done before I left, so I had those goals to reach, and then I had a kind of bit of a period to kind of think back and reflect on it a wee bit, and then I did a week's training to kind of test the waters to see if the hunger was there, and it just wasn't. So I said I'd step away,
It's such a nebulous thing, isn't it? Hunger, and there's some reservations. What are those? What is that for you? What does that mean, like, on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, it's probably a bit of I don't know what way you'd say it, but like I probably fell out of love with the game a wee bit from a few tough defeats that we took at the latter end of last year, in the summer against Donegal and Tyrone. And just, we'll say, those gym sessions, those training sessions late in the evenings, a lot of travelling to be done, and you're kind of thinking to yourself, why am I doing this? Why do I need to? And then you start making those excuses in your head. Oh, sure, we're not going to have this conversation that I missed that gym session when it comes to the 1st of June, or that kind of way. And it's probably not. It's not a good enough attitude to be bringing to Cavan football. And I wouldn't have expected it off a lot of players this last 7, 8, 9 years that I was involved with them. So it was a bit hypocritical of me to.
Because you captained the team.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I captained the team probably 3 years ago now, when Matty McGlean was over.
Right, so you felt like there was a leadership role, and if there's any doubts in your mind that it would be unfair to be somebody who is in a leadership role on the team.
Yeah, no, and I've seen people come in and out of the squads and kind of given that leeway. Some of our better players will say are more talented footballers. They just had a lot going on at the time, and they kind of were coming in and out of the panel as they liked, and it kind of upset other players within the panel, and I just didn't want to be that person.
This was a couple of years ago, or was this last season? Or
No, a couple of years ago.
Right.
I've seen come through, like, just from my own experience,
Right, and that kind of leads to people thinking this isn't fair, because obviously I wouldn't mind 3 or 4 months off.
Yeah, exactly. And if you ask the majority of players, there's certain people that enjoy that kind of hard work and that honest effort, if you understand me. But there's probably a few that could say, I'm not going to be any fitter come June. This is what I can bring to the table, regardless of how fit I am. That kind of way.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that, because Niall Moyna was in recently, and he was saying he figured that, I can't remember the exact figure, it was either 40 or 60%, that you could do a fewer amount of sessions and be just as fit, because there's this culture of train, make sure you're all training so that everybody feels exactly the same. We've all suffered the same, and we've created that bond, but it doesn't really work for everybody, does it?
Yeah, and especially with the way that Niall Moylan is involved there with the colleges and a lot of the senior teams as well. Like, he's probably seen a lot of players doubling up on training sessions, trying to keep everyone happy, you know, that kind of way. But I think that nowadays there's a lot of sports science goes into it. There's a lot of intelligent people involved in county teams, and yes, they might have 6-7 sessions a week, you know. But if you have an S&C coach or a high performance manager involved in that team, if he's worth his salt, he will be able to kind of reduce the exposure to, we'll say, high endurance running, or it'll be video sessions that day, if you understand me. So it's not
totally, so individually tailored programs. But that wasn't enough to keep you interested in going back, or to get your hunger. Like, if they'd come to you and said, okay, well, look, we're going to give you an individually tailored program here, which doesn't force you to do all this stuff, that wasn't going to be enough for you?
Yeah, no. Like, I'm not saying we'll say individually tailored programs to suit the needs of other players. You know, like, I think that one cloth has to cover everyone. You know, just to keep the culture correct within a team environment. But I think everyone's kind of like a sports scientist will adjust that to suit those type of players, or the whole team as a whole. But it didn't really entice me enough to change my mind.
Yeah.
The question is then, like, I mean, you mentioned the one cloth thing, and that's totally understandable. You can't be kind of preaching about what other players should be doing if you're not kind of following the example yourself. And I guess it kind of comes back to the idea that the top teams, the teams that are contesting the All-Ireland finals, have more of an off-season at the moment. Granted, there are a couple of people playing with their clubs and all that. That'll be the case now over the next month or so. But they do have a bit of downtime. They do go off on their team holiday, and they do get to enjoy their Christmas a little bit more than, say, the people who will be targeting pre-season competitions will be when they've got to train over Christmas.
Yeah, you know, and there's probably a few lads, like especially in Cavan, that were involved, that probably had a lengthy, we'll say, period within the championship of the Cavan championship, and they probably had niggles carrying through that championship, and they were going straight back into a rehab program, you know. It was an interesting one, seeing all, I think Tipperary are away on holidays at the minute, you know, and that's something that probably Cavan don't do, you know. They don't give that period off to kind of allow players to, you know, keep the girlfriends happy, keep the wife happy, keep the family happy, or whatever it might be, you know. So that's an interesting one, but we're not just quite there yet, and those kind of added bonuses will come into play when you reach that top level. But you know, that's a conversation for another day, all the same.
How much do you see intercounty playing as a sacrifice in the rest of your life?
Yeah, well, there's ways of looking at it. You know, if it's a lot easier when you're kind of younger and you mightn't have really a clear picture of where you want to go. You know, you can fit into this structure of a high performance team that kind of gives you a good kind of culture and attitude towards life as well. You know, it kind of guided me a good bit in what way I approach life myself. But yeah, no, it's an interesting one, but I don't really know. You know, I'm not 100% sure in regards to that all the same. You know,
like it does seem that obviously it's the number one thing in a lot of young men's lives, that it's an intercounty footballer first, and then the rest of your life kind of follows. Like we were talking about this ESRI report that came out before Christmas, which had a fairly stark statistic that 40% of intercounty footballers, or intercounty players I should say, would change their post-secondary school career choice if they could go back and do it now, which obviously suggests that they made their entire career choice based on the fact that they play county.
Yeah, no, definitely, and I think there's a few lads that'll be exceptions to the rules. You know, you have a few doctors and doctors specifically, you know, they kind of don't have that kind of wriggle room and that kind of flexibility within their job that suits intercounty football. You know, we'd Josh Hayes from Cavan, he was a doctor there, and when he was kind of coming to the latter stages of his we'd say his studying period, you know, he just couldn't give that commitment. You know, he was getting 3 hours sleep a night, and he was expected to go out and play or train for us the next day. And it was just counterproductive all the same, you know. So it tailors the way you make your decisions. For like me myself, I did a business degree and I came out. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and you know, I went into a stockbrokers and developed myself down that route. But a lot of the players would be going down kind of the teaching route, kind of finishing up at 2 or 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock maybe, and then have the evening off to do what they want after that. You know, that kind of way, kind of a bit more of a simple life, more so. And you know, a good few of them would be looking to move home and kind of set up themselves so they only have to go maybe 15-20 minutes to training or whatever it is, compared to your 2.5 hour commute from Dublin, you know, which it's counterproductive as well, kind of sitting in a car for 2.5 hours, and then maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours back up as well. And
potentially getting to their mid to late 30s, regretting their career decision. That is the decision that a lot of people have to weigh up, and you have to ask the question if that's worth it.
Yeah, you know, I don't think a lot of them would have any regrets all the same. You know, probably if, you know, things didn't work out and, you know, you'd have fallen out with the management or you picked up an injury, you'd probably be having those doubts. But if everything was going well and, you know, you can probably justify the commitment if you're in that top 5%, if you're winning or provincial titles or you're winning All-Irons or contesting All-Irons, you do whatever you needed to do, you know, regardless of what career path you took. But it just goes back to, you know, the commitment level is kind of easier to give when you're kind of, you know, contesting that maybe Ulster title or contesting that All-Ireland final, you know.
Would the commitment level be easier if there was an off-season every year, if you didn't feel like you were always training?
Yeah, no, I definitely think it would, you know, and I think I've kind of noticed it in the last month or two. I've kind of got a lot more time to kind of spend with my family and my girlfriend and kind of making my own decisions, you know. And that off-season, it's probably a good conversation to have, but, you know, this period at the minute's probably where you'd be thinking about having it, you know, maybe stretching out. I know there was rules put in place that, you know, you can't feel till December or whatever it is within the GAA. Yeah, no, I don't think there's too many county teams that abide by that rule all the same, you know.
Yeah, anybody is, yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of like a bit of a willy-nilly thing that people just kind of pass it off that, oh, sure, it'll be grand. You know,
if you had November, December and January off every year, or if you had December and January off guaranteed every year, because look, let's you talk about the Dubs going on holidays and it being a bonus, but Tommy's pointing out there that actually Dubs didn't come back until the week of the Monaghan game last year in the league. Kerry aren't back, as far as I know. They're still on holidays, are they?
I think so.
Yeah, so they're away. Maybe they're doing some training on holidays, but I don't think so. They're actually just having downtime and relaxing, and it's not having any impact on their ability to win next season. So this whole notion that you have to constantly be training to build up some store that is going to be like a miraculous... This isn't a computer game where you have like life that gets drained out of you slowly. It really isn't. That's not how fitness works.
Yeah, you know, and I think it probably comes back to the management and them looking to impress, you know, especially if they're a new management team within a county setup, if you understand me, that if they say go to the county board and go, I want to send the lads away for 2 weeks to go on holidays with whoever they want, or with the team for a team environment and developing that kind of friendship within them, you know, like a lot of the counties would just laugh them off. Yeah. Because why would we be sending them boys?
But even if they don't go on holidays, even if you just had that time off away, even if that's like no training, we don't want to see you, go off and spend time with your family, go off and spend time doing whatever it is you want to do for December and January. We don't care what you do, just come back relatively fit.
Yeah.
Like some kind of off season.
Yeah, no, they'll probably have that bit of a well, especially like an S&C or a high performance manager. He wants to control the environment from go, if you understand me. So he wants to say,
well, they're getting paid as well. They're getting paid by the number of sessions, generally, in a lot of cases. So, like, it's certainly the S&C people are professional and they need to be. But, like, if I'm getting paid by the number of sessions, I'm naturally going to have more sessions because it's kind of a conflict of interest.
Yeah. Well, you know, I don't know how. I think the way it's going now, a lot of them are going to be on a salary base, so it won't come into play.
Fair enough. Yeah, and that's exactly what we need to move to.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? And so you don't get paid for, you know, having an extra session here and an extra session there. I think that's kind of counterproductive all the same. But you know, I don't think there's too many managers that would agree to, we'll give everyone a month off here, you know, and the way the culture is within, I think that ESRI report too, with binge drinking and stuff like that, kind of within that off-season period. Like, you know, a lot of the lads might go off the rails. A lot of younger lads might go, geez, I haven't had a period here of a month that I could do what I wanted in the last 4 years. You know, what am I going to do? You know, a lot of them will probably just go, right, I'll go travelling, or I'll settle down and get a bit of work done that I have to catch up on, because I've had a few early clocks or clocking off there early a few times throughout the year that I need to.
It strikes me that you like the game of football.
Yeah, no, I do, yeah.
So how did you fall out of love with it?
Yeah, well, like, I don't really know. I kind of struggled with that myself this last while. Probably at the latter end of last year, like, I took those defeats probably harder than I should have. I should have brushed them off my back a wee bit quicker than I did. And kind of, like, I'm on the road probably 9 years with Cavan now, so I just couldn't get my head around going through that process again and having nothing to show for it. You know, like, as in, I've other things going on. Well, everyone has other things going on as much as anyone else. But I've other things I want to kind of concentrate on or focus in on in my life, and that's the kind of decision I've come to on the back of that, you know.
Yeah.
Like, going through that process is an interesting point you raise. Like, in a hypothetical world, I know it's a kind of an impossible question to answer now, but so your season ended when? In July. So if you had that time off post-July to not be involved with Cavan, and there was an off-season put in place, a concrete one, where your county can contact you for another, say, 2-3 weeks, would you feel that you have then itched the scratch of being an independent young man again, that you've had your 4 or 5 months off, you actually feel like you've got your own headspace back, and you're then prepared to go back into that process, back into the early season, pre-season grind that is required to be a top-class footballer?
Yeah, I think that'd be the way to go forward with it, you know. I think any of the top teams, like your rugby or soccer, they get that period off, and within, like, the way the structure or the fixtures is set up within GAA at the minute, you know, if you have a good club season, like you're saying, you're finishing up in July with Cavan, you know, you go straight back into the club, and all things going well, you could be playing up till
But I presume you enjoy that.
Yeah, no, like last couple of years I enjoyed it, you know, but I didn't enjoy it this year,
right?
You know, so I was kind of struggling with that, as in I enjoyed, like, that's kind of, because within Cavan and within county teams you play to a lot of structure, and there's a lot of tactics, and there's a lot of thinking behind what you're doing, you know. And within my own club, it probably wouldn't be regarded as a top tier club in Cavan, but we're senior this year, we won the intermediate a few years ago, and you can kind of play it off the cuff, and you can kind of express yourself and use those skills you're after learning, you know, that kind of way. And I enjoyed that the last 5-6 years when I used to go back to them, and then obviously meeting the lads you grew up with as well, and having the crack with them. But I just wasn't enjoying it then this year, we'll say, so I kind of put a halt to everything, and just that's what a decision I came up with then after that.
It's fair enough, and look, no one can quibble with that. Is part of this then as well that the competition structures are such that it's very hard for a team like Cavan to make progress? You've got to put everything into those early rounds of the Ulster Championship, and if you lose one of those games, it's almost impossible to come back from at an emotional pitch.
Yeah, I don't know if the competition structures are a disadvantage to Cavan. I think Cavan I think the bar is set very high in Ulster with Donegal and Tyrone. I think they're probably leading lights at the minute, and probably Armagh and Monaghan probably the next tier down. But I think just Cavan as a whole just need to get better and reach that standard that they've reached, and, you know, quit pointing the blame on something else more so, as and even myself in that regard, you know, as in just kind of get on with it more.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. And so this was like the last 18 months, it felt like you guys were putting in performances where you were finally fulfilling the potential of the great minor and under 21 teams that you were part of. In a way, it seems like now they're getting that close. It's harder to walk away than it is to go back.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And like a lot of I think the majority of the panel, there's probably a few younger lads that involved this year, and probably, you know, your 20, 21, 22-year-olds that wouldn't have had that exposure to that minor team or under 21 team. But, you know, it suits certain lads. Like a lot of the lads kind of have settled, we'll say, within Cavan, and have kind of based their life around having that kind of easier lifestyle that will kind of suit going to training 10, 15, 20 minutes down the road or something.
So the travel is another thing that kind of begins to get in.
You could be travelling 22 hours a week or whatever it is, like, you know, and that's probably a bit excessive, maybe 16 hours a week, give or take, you know.
It's quite a lot.
That obviously paid a wee bit of a hindrance on it as well, you know, that kind of way. But, you know, it wasn't the be-all and end-all the same.
Yeah.
You know, I don't mind the driving. But.
Yeah. In terms of the style of play and how the game is evolving at the moment, was it enjoyable to play?
Yeah, no, it definitely was. I think especially last year we kind of, you know, I think I mentioned this last time I was on, which is here as well, but Cavan was known as the Black Death, you know, where we played that defensive structure, and it was probably after Donegal had All-Ireland success, probably the next 2 or 3 years we were kind of had a similar structure to them. But especially last year and the year before, we kind of changed that to a kind of more of a forward press and kind of looking to get those turnovers higher up the field, and I find that more enjoyable than kind of sitting back and kind of waiting for a mistake to attack. So I think that a lot of the teams are going down that route. I was at the Kilcoo game on Saturday night. You know, they're fairly defensive now. I think Conor Lavery was the only man up front for them in the first half. But when they got that turnover, it was all guns blazing. all guns blazing, and the 2 goals they got in the first and second half were both from turnovers high up the field. So it obviously does pay its dividends all the same.
Yeah, okay. And then FOMO this summer when Cavan are doing well, what's that going to feel like for you?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. It's a good question. I don't know what the answer's going to be yet. It's probably be a tough one to take, but I have to stand by my decision and just get on it and just take it like a man more so than anything else.
Did you have to come out of the team WhatsApp group?
Yeah. That was done straight away when the decision was made. So.
Right.
Did you leave it or did they kick you?
Geez, that's a good question. I don't even remember. I'm not actually sure. I think I don't. Yeah, I'd say they probably removed me more so.
And was that straightforward? Were you happy enough for that to happen, or was that like, oh, that's okay?
No. I knew what was coming down the line. You know, I knew what I was getting myself involved for there. So.
Are you doing any training? Like, are you addicted to training anyway, or is this?
No, not necessarily. You know, like actually just playing a bit of soccer at the minute. I'm playing a bit of racquetball too. I have a friend that's fairly good at racquetball, Joe Dillon from Kingscourt. So too, I was just kind of baiting away at that and see where that takes us, you know.
Yeah, you were a
But
decent
more
soccer
fun.
player underage, obviously.
I was all right now. Where are you getting that information from? I was all right now. I wouldn't say I was any airs of grace about me, but you know, something I haven't played soccer in 8 years, or 7, 8 years, because you know, if you picked up a soccer injury playing a game of soccer, you know, there's a few players, Damien Coleman, probably one of the big, higher profile ones that would have picked it up. Playing soccer in Stephen's Day, I think 2 years ago, that. But yeah, no, I haven't been allowed to play it or been able to play it the last few years, so I want to kind of dabble with it now this year, hopefully, for a few games.
Just one last one for me, Killian. Are you concerned at all about intercounty football? Are you worried about its future if there are people involved with the top counties in Ireland walking away because they don't enjoy it enough?
Yeah, I'm slightly concerned. You know, like I think the GAA kind of relies on people having a love of the GAA and a love of the actual sport itself, as in playing the game, and they kind of have a reliance on people enjoying that environment. And if that environment isn't correctly set up, or that love goes out of the player itself, there's not a lot more to attract them to that sport, if you understand me. That's one thing I would say that, you know, people are kind of developing. You can see a lot of my friends will say, and people of my age group are kind of moving away, getting on with their life, doing other things, you know, maybe buying houses or going travelling to Australia, America, wherever they're at. You know, and unless you're in that, you know, that top tier, that 5%, you know, that interprovincial title, that All-Ireland title, it's going to be a hard one to go, oh yeah, I can justify this commitment. You know, because I love kicking a ball over the bar, or I love that hard training, you know, it's kind of...
And do you feel Cavan aren't there at the moment?
Aren't there in regards to...
An interprovincial title, a top 5%?
I'd say they're not miles away, and I'd say we've been knocking on that door the last few years. I think the exits this year won't help the cause, but hopefully it will develop other players in that area. And, you know, I think Conor Mina and Darren McVitie, and 2 boys that are travelling at the minute, hopefully they will come back within a year's time or that, and only strengthen the team on from the other players getting exposure then too, you know.
You guys were all in that minor team together, so you've all kind of soldiered through high profile games and that level of intensity and stress that comes from representing the county. Is there a possibility that you just enjoy civilian life enough and go, I had 9 years of playing intercounty football, that's actually enough for me, and I'm going to go off and follow my career and, you know, invest time in my relationship with my family and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting one. The answer is I don't know. You know, like, as in, if I'm happy, you know, like, I'd be a big believer in, you know, do things that make you happy. You know, like, as in, if that's training 7 nights a week and, you know, doing a dog on it as much as you can with your county team, that's all well and good. That's for you. But, you know, if spending more time with your family or being able to go to different events, you know, your girlfriend's birthday or whoever it is, your cousin's birthday, if you want to do those things as well, it's just depending on what path you want to take for yourself. So, you know, we'll just recap next year, and I'll kind of have a good think about it to see, well, hopefully Mickey will take me back all the same, you know, you wouldn't know what way they're going.
Yeah.
But, you know, hopefully I'll make myself available for selection then next year if my head's in the right place for it.
All right, well, listen, best of luck with it. Enjoy the year off. Any specific plans? Is there like I want to go to Electric Picnic, any of those kind of festivals that you wouldn't have been able to go to before?
Any specific plans? No, not necessarily. I was looking into maybe Coachella, maybe something along those lines.
Right,
I was
nice.
thinking, but very early stages. But no,
you got to do it. Once it's in your head, you got to do it.
yeah. No, I have a few people heading over that direction at the same time. So no specific plans. Just kind of take it easy and take life as it comes, more so than anything else.
So your Instagram account's going to be lit for this next 8 months, just to make sure that your teammates have the FOMO and that you don't.
No, I keep it on the down low.
Killian, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Right, we've got Tadhg Kennelly coming up in a few minutes. First, though, last night here on the Football Show, Pat Nevin shared a story of a close call with Roman Abramovich, or maybe a Roman Abramovich lookalike, in rural Scotland. Have a look.
The story was I was in the island of Arran, and I was driving around up in the west coast of Scotland. I was driving around, and as I drove around, I nearly hit a cyclist and just got out of his way. And as I went by, I checked him out. I thought, he looks hell of a lot Roman Abramovich, that guy. Anyway, about a week later, there's a story, and he was on that island that day. I nearly killed Roman Abramovich. So this had happened to me about 3 years ago, and I kind of forgot.
He was on a bike. Why wouldn't he be on a bike? He likes exercise.
Yeah,
does he?
Well, he does. He takes the massive big yacht up the Mull Kintyre, and then him and a number of his mates and bodyguards as well. They love the place. They love the west coast of Scotland. It's one of the most beautiful. I go my holidays there every year because it's brilliant and it's absolutely beautiful. And he apparently loves the whole area. So, but I hadn't thought about it anyway, and I never ever told this story. Anyway, I told that story for a wee laugh Sunday night. It was only in the Times, page 3 today. And the Scotsman, and I only told it as a laugh. They were having this big banner headline, Nevin nearly kills Abramovich. And to this day, I'm pretty sure it was him, because I remember going, well, I nearly killed that guy there. And then only found out later.
It definitely was him. Definitely was. You don't mistake Roman Abramovich and then you happen to be in the area. Definitely was him.
The fact that when I got down to the bottom of the hill and I turned around, there was a big old yacht out there. I should have probably figured it out, but I had other things in my mind. I had golf in my mind or something.
Have you considered the consequences of what would have happened if that actually, went through?
I don't think you'd be on off the ball either show.
Hey, now that it's getting out, I don't know if I want to consider the consequences.
Can we attempted manslaughter, is that a thing?
Yeah. Do you know the worst thing about it? I actually know him okay as well. I've met him 3 or 4 times.
Have you told him?
No. You'll know now because it's been in the Times.
Roman, it's kind of a funny story, actually. I better tell it to you, but...
I nearly killed you, Roman. He's like, what? He's like, yeah.
I think I've forgotten all about it.
For years I wondered who that man was.
That's quite the action, Johnny. Hold on.
I thought you looked like Pat Nevin.
He's keeping going. I like it.
Right. It's good for everybody that everybody survived that one.
Yeah. The Roman Abramovich impression there at the end was quite the cherry on the cake of a great story there. Wow. Yeah, it's Pat Nevin trying to infiltrate Chelsea Football Club in his own unique way.
Also, an amazing salesman for the west coast of Scotland. I didn't know. It's beautiful. Knew nothing about it.
I think you can kind of almost look at the map of Scotland and say to yourself, that
That's
actually looks
nice.
Rather extraordinary.
It's going to be the same as it's just like miles and miles of Kerry / Donegal.
Yeah, except they don't bang on about it.
Which is kind of stupid, right?
Really stupid.
I mean, now considering heading over to the west coast of Scotland. Right, let's move on. Some rugby for you. Here's Keith Wood talking about the impact of the IRFU's player management system on the Irish provinces.
I don't think the run-in is a good run-in. I whatever about the IRFU's policy of minding players, and I believe we should be minding players, we absolutely should. This is not a way to do it, to take 12 players out of a team over 2 weeks before a must-win game. That seems to be putting the IRFU's position first over and above the provinces. So they get away with it in Leinster because Leinster have a huge number of players. I don't know that they get away with it in Munster. If we go back 4 years ago, Connacht flew 4 years ago. They had nobody involved with Ireland. They did incredibly well while all the other provinces were struggling. Now they had a few guys in it this year. Even a few guys puts them under pressure. You pick up a couple of injuries, life becomes an awful lot harder. I just think it's the nature of this particular year. And I think it makes it very, very tough for everybody. But rather than get angry or kind of hurl blame at everybody, I think you have to look at these situations and say, okay, I don't know that the IRFU has necessarily got it right this time. I really don't. I think they've put pressure on provinces that is unnecessary. And I think if you actually take a financial view to it, will CVC like this in the coming years, that you'd have a big game like Munster against Leinster and say, actually, you're putting your second teams out for that? I don't know if they'll want that. The commercial body is looking for commercial returns. They're really big marquee games.
All right, yeah, good stuff there from Keith Wood on Wednesday Night Rugby last night. And you can, sorry, it's obviously not Wednesday Night Rugby, it was Monday Night Rugby. Skipped a couple of days there. New Year. You can get that on wherever you get your podcasts. Best place is on the Go Loud app or indeed offtheball.com/podcast. Tom is here. Tom, how are you?
Good, Jerry, yeah.
Good morning to you.
I'm well. Yeah, poor old Joey Carbery. He looks set to miss the entire Six Nations campaign. The Munster playmaker is to undergo surgery on a wrist ligament injury sustained in that Pro 14 game against Ulster at the weekend. The injury could sideline the player for up to 3 months, according to some reports, raising the stakes, of course, for Jonathan Sexton to prove his fitness for Ireland's opener against Scotland on February 1st. Sexton will, of course, miss Leinster's upcoming matches with a knee problem, and Munster have an injury crisis ahead of the Champions Cup match away to Racing 92 on Sunday. JJ Hanrahan has been battling a hamstring injury. Tyler Blaendal has a neck problem. Carbery, of course, only started 4 games since last January. So now you're in a situation where Munster have the prospect of moving Scannell into 10 from 12, and Ben Healy, who was only moved into the squad in November, didn't see any game time at all over the Christmas period. He was only a sub against Connacht. So what do you reckon?
Well, I don't know why we're stopping with Munster with Ben Healy. The way things are going at the moment, Ben Healy could make his Ireland debut at the start of the Six Nations.
But even the way Munster used their subs, so against Saracens, they only had 2 backs on the bench. So do they even? They're just so stuck. So what do you do? Say that Conor Murray could potentially be the 10 backup move if something happens to Scannell? I mean, it's so raw to send someone of Ben Healy's inexperience into.
I know it's not like
defence arena, and
it's not like it's the dead rubber at the end of the season, and you're already qualified or you're already out. And you go, yeah, come on, you can play this game. It's like their killer back row will be trying to crush whoever's playing.
Absolutely,
10.
especially if
that's
you're
their job.
Kid.
Yeah,
I suppose you just tell them.
France has a long tradition of throwing neophyte 19 and 20-year-olds in, and them throwing the ball between their legs and dancing around our team and dotting down for a try. Like, hang on a second, where did this guy come from? So that was back in the old days when the Irish team would have been out drinking the night before.
This is just our good old inferiority complex coming right back up again. If you have not played before, you cannot possibly play well on your opening game. That is a conversation we're having now. I get full support. Like it obviously makes more experiential sense to put Rory Scannell in there, but like as you say, with regards to the backup 10. Like then, if Scannell is your 12, he could obviously move in as a more satisfactory 10 than say Conor Murray would be, because you kind of need him at 9, anchoring things. So
but then even look at the backup at 9. Like it's Cronin, who's also highly inexperienced, or Nick McCarthy, who hasn't looked brilliant since he's moved down there as well. So even if you say, oh, we'll move our best player into 10, and then you're going to have like a very, very inexperienced 9, or Nick McCarthy, who hasn't really cut it so far. It's a massive risk for Munster, no matter what we do.
Yeah, I mean, maybe like the least risky thing is Murray at 10. In that, he's going to be able to deal with whatever anybody.
Yeah, he's physically going to be able to deal with it. He's going to
pass really well. He's not going to be.
Well, Rory Scannell will be able to physically deal with anything.
He's not going to be taking it.
Yeah. You just don't kick. Like Murray will be your place kicker. And
Murray's a good place kicker though.
Like the way Munster play, let's not forget, like 9 is still a hugely important position.
Yeah, absolutely.
We can't just ditch the scrum half.
Can you like have him go in when you're going to box kick?
Oh well, there you go. There you go back to your French policy of just having the 9 and 10 interchangeable.
Yeah. I mean, that might bamboozle them. They might be like, hang on a second, you guys can't do this.
What are these guys doing?
We thought this isn't Bayonne we're playing.
Yeah. Anyway, speaking of being bamboozled, the FAI are believed to be on the verge of securing a deal to safeguard their future. The Irish Daily Mail are reporting today that the association will agree an €18 million deal bailout with the government and also their banks this week. 4 independent directors are also due to be announced over the coming days. Well, Manchester United and Manchester City go head-to-head in the first English League Cup semi-final tonight. The first leg kicks off at Old Trafford at 8 o'clock. And United boss Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is relishing a derby battle.
You always want to win trophies, of course, and we're so close now. But having your local derbies in a semi-final is going to be hopefully two good games and 2 good days in Manchester.
Also, of course, Arsenal last night booked their place in the fourth round of the FA Cup with a 1-0 win over Leeds United at the Emirates Stadium last night. Again, Leeds were excellent, just kind of forgetting to score. Reece Nelson did score the only goal of the game in the 55th minute. Mikel Arteta's side were far better in the second half, having been, like I say, outplayed in the first. The Spaniard said he made it clear to his players at the interval that the performance in the first 45 was not acceptable.
The way they play make it really difficult and uncomfortable. Everything is man-to-man around the pitch. So it becomes a transition game, is everything duels, everything is 50-50. So if you're not ready for that game, you get exposed and you get done. And obviously the second half was a different story.
Meanwhile, Arsenal will now travel to Bournemouth in the next round after the draw for the last 32 was made earlier in the evening. The pick of the other ties from that draw, the winners of Wolves Manchester United will take on the winners of Watford and Tranmere. Chelsea will face Hull City. Leicester City will wait with Brentford. Holders Manchester City will entertain Fulham, while the winners of Bristol City and Shrewsbury will host Premier League leaders Liverpool.
Okay, so that's good. They all stayed apart. It means the fifth round is going to be good.
Yeah.
And good quarterfinals, because you want them all. You don't want two.
You don't want these clashes early.
No. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you do, because it doesn't matter, does it? It's only the cup.
Well, were we not saying earlier on the cups matter extra this year because the league ain't on the line? So to the likes of your Manchester Cities, to your Chelseas.
Well, you're going to need those vanity trophies, aren't you?
100%.
It's like, oh, we got 2 trophies this year. Well,
Pep's already won the Community Shield, so
3, yeah.
Quid's in.
That was like when Jose Mourinho got the Spurs job. And there was like debate about how many trophies he had done, but the Spurs press release included his charity shield.
Of course it did. Well, under Spurs.
To bring it up.
Under instruction from Jose.
You can be sure that if Tottenham happen to win the Community Shield next season under Jose Mourinho, they are actually going to put it on the hoardings on their thing.
Yeah,
Community Shield winners.
Pride of place in their massive shelf for all their trophies. Anyway, one news on transfers. Scott Sinclair is set for a move to Preston North End from Celtic. He missed training in Dubai and set to fly back to the UK ahead of that transfer to the Championship club.
Willie Mullins not in favour of a 5-day Cheltenham?
No, nor would I. It's just a massive dilution of...
It used to be 3 days, right?
It used to be 3 days. Yeah. It's now up to 4. There will be one more race next year and a race will be dropped. It'll be continued to go and it's... 4-day format. David James in the Racing Post today suggested a way of making it work where you do like Ascot and have a 30-race 5-day programme. We just have 6 races every day. But even the way he laid it out,
how many
sadly looks dreadful. It'll be 28 races at the moment. So yeah, so it's not different. It's just like there's already a problem with dilution of quality. There's already an issue with horses missing. Like the fans basically been shortchanged by horses just not taking each other on. As in, there's the 2-mile chase, 2.5-mile chase in the Gold Cup. So they can all just divert. And then, it's looking at having 3 distances basically for every kind of category. And then you've got a mare's hurdle to take all the good mares away from the champion hurdle. And talking about adding a 2.5-mile hurdle as well, which would further dilute a champion hurdle, which is already weakened.
Okay, so the issue would be that you add extra races and then you need to find good quality horses to fill those, and you're taking those from an already small field.
Yeah, absolutely. And the problem with, I suppose, the way horses have been sourced at the moment, they're all kind of quite... I mean, you look at sort of 3-year-old stores and the way horses are bought to go jumping, they're all kind of similar, like, types, as in they're all sort of, the likes of the Envoy Allen is the absolute peak type, i.e. horses that ultimately you think will go on to win Gold Cups. And they're the most fashionable types of horses to buy at the moment, i.e. ones coming from point-to-point fields. They're the ones that the big owners are paying the big money for. So, as well as the dilution of quality, there's kind of a homogenisation of the way horses are being bought. So a lot of the fanciest owners are all looking for the same type of horses. So there isn't actually enough a spread of profile of horses to fill up these races.
Okay, all right. But you know that the TV companies will pay more.
Absolutely. And Cheltenham. I spoke to someone about Cheltenham and they say they have to increase turnover by 5% annually just to kind of stay still.
Right.
So that kind of pressure is on them year in, year out. So
do you think it's going to happen?
I'd say it will.
How soon?
I'd say maybe 4 or 5 years.
Okay, all right. No, we've got plenty of time to
enjoy
bitch and moan about that. All right, 8:45 this morning. Thanks very much for that, Tom. Tadhg Kennelly is going to join us in a few minutes here on OTB AM. First, let's hear from Kieran Donaghy speaking to Off the Ball last night about the measures the GAA could take to stop inter-county players stepping away from the inter-county scene.
I think maybe talking to these guys and actually finding out, look, listen, what's the root cause of this retirement or this break or this step away? What are the issues? What are you finding hard? Are you enjoying it as much as you did at the start, or what are the issues here that these guys are stepping away? Because I couldn't imagine myself stepping away at any stage of my career. I absolutely loved it and dragged the last bit out of it. But again, I don't know, is that because I always knew we had a chance? I always knew we were going to be competitive. I knew we were going to be in big games, whether it be in Fitzgerald Stadium in a Munster final or whether it was going to be in, big games in Croke Park. And they're the games you really wanted to play in, you really wanted to peak for. You aren't necessarily dying for a McKenna Cup game or McGrath Cup game in the 26th of December, when teams aren't supposed to be training and stuff like that. But, I was certainly looking forward to the summer games, and stepping away would have never been an option for me no matter what, so... but again, I was playing most of the time. I was, a relatively important figure in the dressing room, and lucky enough to be from a very strong county that was always going to be competitive. So I find it hard sometimes. I can only give my own feelings on it, but I think there needs to be serious questions asked to these guys stepping away.
And that's exactly the conversation that we were having a little bit earlier on with Killian about his decision to step away from Cavan at the moment, because it does feel like Cavan are as close now as they've ever been in the last 20 years, and so it must be difficult to step away from that. But also, it feels like the competitions are skewed. I do think that the structures don't allow a team to go, okay, we've set up a base camp here, and from this base camp we can get to the next level, and the next level after that. It's like all or nothing. It's this year. This is going to be the last year that we all put this intense effort in to try and win one of the two things, which is obviously a provincial title or an All-Ireland. And Cavan are not realistic contenders for All-Irelands at the moment because the Dubs are so far ahead of everybody.
Like, that's almost a ridiculous notion that you're a Division 1 county who is competing on merit in an Ulster final. Now, granted, they fell well below their expectations in the Ulster final last year. I completely agree with you on the competitions being skewed. It's unfair on the Ulster counties to have to put in the body of work that is required for a county like Cavan to make it to an Ulster final, get hammered. Was it a hammering? I can't quite remember, but Donegal were comprehensive at least in the end. But then the draw comes out and they get Tyrone. And then, I remember that was definitely a hammering. That was a pulverisation because, in part, I'd imagine, because Cavan had to come off the back of that Ulster final defeat.
Donegal beat them 124 to 216.
Okay, so it wasn't a hammering. And it's certainly not as big as the Tyrone one anyway.
Beaten, Tommy says. Cavan came back late, but...
that would have been extremely difficult for them to come back from. So it is skewed. But I would say, it is a slight concern when you have players from the top table, like the players who were in and around Division 1, considering that football isn't enjoyable. Like, it should be enjoyable at the very least for some of the best counties, and it turns out that there's actually really only a true pleasure at the moment for 2, 3, 4 counties.
Tyrone 120, Cavan 6 points.
Yeah, it was a hockeying. It was over by half time, and that was the season done. So that probably leaves you a bit demoralised going into the winter and facing into that pre-season training that was probably required, as he said earlier on.
Yeah, how do you fix it?
Well, if we look at the possible championship proposals that are coming through, the idea that you would have a more even numerically even provincial championship around the country, that might be a start where you don't have it skewed, at least in terms of the games that you have to play.
Who are you taking out of Ulster?
That's a tricky question. Like,
Monaghan, woohoo! We're into Monaghan in Connacht every year. They'd fancy their chances.
Mm-hmm.
Cavan and Connacht every year, they'd fancy their chances. But Cavan are the kingpins of Ulster, so they've got to stay.
It would have to be for Mana and Donegal in Connacht, would it, geographically? Just trying to think who kind of meld those provinces together.
They at least touch, but you're sort of Monaghan and Cavan.
True. So, I don't know. It is kind of a weird situation that we are kind of
make an Antrim, so they've got a chance of winning, as opposed to it's the furthest away. But sure, the roads are better.
Would you don the saffron once again if Antrim were in the Connacht
no.
Championship?
No.
With your connections to Antrim and all that. Like it would never happen for them. Like they would probably cause an upset one year where they beat a Mayo or a Galway, and then I don't know, Roscommon would slither along and end Antrim's hopes of winning a Connacht Championship. It is ridiculous that we're even entertaining this notion, but really the only way that you fix this and the only way that it is fair on all those counties is that there is a fair competition. And the Championship, the number one competition that we have at the moment, is not fair.
No.
The fair competition that we have is the Alliance Leagues, and that is why they're the best competition.
It's
they're
true.
in a crap time of year.
No, it's going to be interesting to see what our weather ends up settling as. Like it's 13 degrees in Dublin today, which is insane for the 7th of January. But definitely, you feel like if there was only one massive competition every year in the summertime, that you could have 2 months off or 3 months off and plenty of time for the clubs to have their time, then that would be enough. Everybody would go, this Sam Maguire, which is like our Super Bowl for the top teams in the second tier, is happening at the same time in the league. And very easy to work out what that system would be like, but we're not even having that conversation really. I mean, it was one of the ideas put forward, but the 4/8 I think is going to be the one that ends up coming forward. So we end up with just a hybrid of what we have.
Essentially, yeah. Like flipping the thing from the springtime to the summer would obviously be the ideal situation here. Then, like these are notions that are perhaps too radical as well.
They're not radical. They really aren't radical. They're exactly what all the counties are doing at their own level. It's a system that already exists within most counties.
Mm-hmm. Like what I mean by too radical is in the GAA's prism of things, that these sort of ideas don't tend to get through. Now that being said, like things have been getting a little bit more radical in Congress, I guess, over the past few years. Like Super 8 was a fairly novel concept, given that the structure we had one significant change, which was the qualifiers over its entire history. Granted, you had like the Tommy Murphy Cup thrown in there and then taken away, which I guess was probably the most radical thing that the GAA had
and
done.
which was much closer to a solution to all of this. Anyway,
like we still don't seem to have any clarity really going into this year about what the exact coverage plan is of this Tier 2 Championship this summer. I know it's still early in the year and I'm sure that'll be figured out, but there was kind of like loose talk at the Special Congress in November, was it, that there would be kind of broadcast commitments and what I would see as promotional commitments to this Tier 2 competition, which is a life support machine in its early years.
Yeah. That's all going to be very interesting to see how that plays out, and that's the next great thing. But I think all these conversations are connected. I think that it would be much harder to walk away if you had 3 home games every summer in a division where you were playing against teams of your level with either relegation or promotion on the line. So the last few games of that season are going to be meaningful because you could get relegated to the second tier, or you could get promoted to the first tier, and that could be your curtain raiser on All-Ireland final day. Mm-hmm. Hard to do that. Maybe that should be the Saturday night. It's a weekend of football. Saturday night, 5 o'clock. And it doesn't have to be in Croke Park, but it can be, Like if Cork were in the second tier, or if Kildare were in the second tier, or if Down were in the second tier, would a big crowd go for the All-Ireland semi-final, final, whatever, for the Paddy O'Shea, whatever it's called, to get promotion? They probably would.
They probably would. Like I would say for any inter-county player to keep interest in, you have to ask yourself the question, what is the thing or a number of things that you are looking forward to over the next few months? And for a lot of inter-county footballers at the moment, there isn't a hell of a lot to look forward to. There may be a chance that you put together like a run that, say, Leitrim did in the league last year, and they managed to get themselves and their fans a day out in Croke Park to get promotion to Division 3. But for a lot of people, the National League is slogging around muddy pitches, and when it gets to the real time, when the season really starts, there is nothing to look forward to, because somewhere down the line you can see a behemoth of a county waiting for you to club you out of your way and send your confidence levels rushing beyond the ground once again, and everything just seems like it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
Sorry to be negative on so early in the
suddenly
year.
America looks great. Right, 8:55 this morning. Irish Independent Rugby correspondent Rory O'Connor gave us his latest take on the battle for Ireland's number 9 shirt after Ulster's emphatic win over Munster. Have a look.
There's a lot to be said for someone who scores a try in nearly every game he plays, and just, Murray has never had a stinker of a game for Ireland or Munster in the last year. He's had a couple of, he's been below the level that we expected from him, but that was like an 8 or 9 out of 10 pretty much consistently all the time. And that's what you're watching Cooney play out of his skin on a week-to-week basis, and Andy Farrell's decision is whether he goes for Conor Murray at 6 or 7 or maybe 5 sometimes against Cooney at 8 or 9, and that's a decision that's on his on his in tray at the moment. But Cooney definitely pressed his case really, really well. He overcame those early errors, and he's just so sharp and so smart in what he does all the time. He just looks like he's a lot of energy. He's an energy giver to the team. He makes good decisions. He's working really well in tandem with Billy Burns. He's got McCluskey there, who's absolutely in incredible form and is playing his way into the Ireland selection. Issues as well. Like some of the offloads he threw were very smart, as well as being sensational, as well as his good defence. So, Cooney's the form man. If you're picking an Irish 15 purely on form right now, who's been the best 15 of this season? It's John Cooney. Obviously, Andy Farrell's prerogative is to pick the team that's going to play Scotland. It's will this team beat Scotland? Who's at number 8? Who's at number 10? They're the decisions he's making around it. But it's hard to argue against Cooney right now. I mean, I would pick him based on what he's doing, and I'd probably put Murray on the bench and keep him very much involved, because he's too important to start leaving out altogether.
Yeah, 8:56 this morning. There's a conversation we had about that, right? Like, what's the message you're sending out if you pick Murray, and what's the message you're sending out if you pick Cooney? Because it's going to have a knock-on impact from everybody else. It was interesting talking to Killian earlier on. He was like, as a member of the squad, if other players are being treated differently from you, it causes unrest. He was talking about a couple of years ago, didn't name the specific players who were being the more talented players in the group who were being allowed to have time off. That's a very interesting group dynamic, right? And you've got to think about that, because if you pick Murray when there's a growing consensus that Cooney's form is better, then does everybody else who's in the team think, well, my position here is, I'm the incumbent, so I can't be dropped? Whereas actually there should be pressure on everybody.
I think certainly going into this year there has to be the case with a new coach, but also coming off the back of a terrible year. Like, you can somehow have a little bit of sympathy for, at the start of 2019, saying, well, Sexton and Murray are safe.
Yeah.
Like, they've put in so much. Sexton is reigning World Player of the Year, for God's sake. He starts, no matter what happens in his form in January. But this is a long time since we've seen peak form from a lot of these players. And in contrast to that, we have a player who doesn't have any of the cobwebs of the World Cup, who is arguably the form halfback in European rugby, never mind Irish rugby at the moment. You have to start him. I don't think it's a discussion anymore. And it's up to Conor Murray to work his way back into the squad, and hopefully the success of picking players on form is that sometime a player like Conor Murray can come back to what he was in 2018, which I'm sure a lot of people have a lot of hope that he can achieve that.
I think Conor Murray's going to have a great second half to his career, and I think there's loads and loads and loads of time left for him to do that. But most careers have a bit where you just lose a bit of form, you refocus, whatever happens. There's loads of things that can feed into a second coming. The Lions tour is a great thing for him to look forward to, given that he ended up as first choice the last time. And I've no doubt that he's going to be in the mix for that if he gets his form back. So there's loads for him to look forward to, but also from Andy Farrell's perspective, it is just this injection of chaos into everybody's thinking. It's like, okay, I am not safe. Even if you're Tadhg Furlong or James Ryan or Peter O'Mahony, whoever those, you're guaranteed to be in my team, Gary Ringrose, Keith Earls, everybody suddenly goes, Jesus, they dropped Conor Murray. I'm not safe. That's an infection of everybody competing with each other, driving standards, just improving things a little bit. At the start of an era, I think it's a very important thing for him to do.
Hugely important. And then in contrast to that, what message would it send out if he didn't do that? And the feeling amongst the camp was that Cooney was the deserving member in the number 9 jersey. So it can work both ways, but it's just a perfect opportunity for him to do this. And I'm sure Conor Murray would probably get the message as well. He probably realises and he knows what's going on up in Ulster at the moment and the form that's been shown and the chance it is deserving that John Cooney deserves at the moment as well. So it has to be the decision that has to be taken. Like, you go back through Irish rugby and the undroppables throughout the years, like Murray is as close as you get.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's O'Driscoll and Sexton and O'Connell, and they're probably just an inch ahead of Conor Murray in this regard.
Tadhg Furlong, you'd
Tadhg
say,
Furlong
got there.
But this is still a huge call. You can't overstate what it is to drop Conor Murray. But
exactly. But the pressure is that if you come off a defeat against Scotland, who, you know, we hammered in the World Cup and who we generally kind of account for unless our bus is a bit late. It's a slow start to your career coaching Ireland. So what do? You want a safe team who are going to go out, scratch out a win, and then you move on. Or, like, so Brendan Fanning was running at the weekend that he wouldn't be surprised to see Stuart McCluskey play for Ireland, that McCluskey was one of those whose faces didn't fit really under Joe Schmidt. He's been playing very well. Like, could you see McCluskey playing in the centre for Ireland? Are you radical and you pick... so your backline could be Cooney, Ross Byrne, Henry and McCluskey, and then Conway on one wing, Larmour at fullback, and Stockdale on the other?
Well, like leaving out the former midfielder in Ireland and Gary Ringrose would be one hell of a decision.
It would be, but so maybe put Ringrose in. I don't know. Like, how radical are you in your thinking in your first game? Or are you like, I'm going, Sexton's fit that week, he's back in, I'm going Murray, Sexton, Henshaw, Ringrose, Stockdale. Who's my fullback?
Here's the question.
Conway and Larmour on the wing.
Will Addison, though? Will Addison will be putting his hand up as well at the moment. Like, you talk about John Cooney, you've raised McCluskey there, it's been written about in the newspapers for the last few days. Will Addison is also in that bracket. The Ulster boys who are really pushing for a starting spot in this Irish team. It's great. Jacob Stockdale's form is back. He probably has locked down a wing spot at this point. I would say himself and Gary Ringrose are the two.
Addison?
No, Stockdale. And Gary Ringrose are the two locks at the moment.
Where does Larmour play?
In Ireland's backs. For me, Jordan Larmour edges Will Addison for the full-back position. Just about. Like, it's a fascinating...
Put Larmour on the wing because he can play there.
He possibly could do that.
Or do you play him full-back because, like, come on.
And then you've got a really exciting back three, but is it exciting because it's new, or is it exciting because it'll actually deliver results in a very attractive manner?
And do you pick all these players in their first game, which is your first game, or do you go, okay, so it's obviously not Addison's first game, but, like, you know, first game as a starter properly. You're saying, you're my guy. Today, I need to win this match because it's a big deal for me, big deal for the country, big deal for our new era when I'm trusting you. Do you do that? Maybe you do, and he's your guy forever then. As in, he'll die for you after that.
Okay, he'll die for you. I'm not sure is he your guy forever. Like,
I mean, he's always wedded to you. I'm not saying that you're wedded to him, but he is wedded to you. He's like, yeah, okay. John Cooney, if John Cooney gets picked, he thinks the greatest coach in the world, in the history of the world, is Andy Farrell, and he will do anything for Andy Farrell for the rest of his life. His first child is going to be named Andy, even if it's a girl. Like, that's the type of thing. So you know, like, and he's got to make these relationships with these players.
He does. Like, it's great that Scotland is first up, is it not?
What?
It's great that it's Scotland first up. Like,
yeah.
what I'll just, like, I know I've got a bad record of getting
Italy would have been perfect.
Getting stuff played back to me after bad Six Nations predictions. But I'm going to go with this one and say,
go on, piss on Scotland.
It's a good thing that Scotland are first up. We have an excellent record when buses don't get stuck in traffic over the last 5 to 8 years or so.
And then we should know the bus route really from the Shelbourne to the Aviva, right? It's games in Dublin, right?
It is.
It is, yeah.
So
we'll be grand. We know the Gardaí, that's the thing. We didn't know the Scottish cops, that was the thing.
It will be grand. That always works out well at the start of a Six Nations.
Yeah, right. So we're going to be speculating wildly on who's going to be starting for Ireland in the Six Nations quite a lot over the next while. We're also going to be bringing back the patented and world exclusive power rankings over the course of the next few days. That's all coming your way, so make sure you stay tuned for that. It is 9:04 this morning. Now, every Saturday you can follow all the live football action on Off the Ball, live on air and on YouTube. It is ceaseless crack, is how we describe it. You'll get plenty of insightful analysis like this from Johnny Ward and Damien Delaney.
We obviously have a change here at halftime. Aaron Connolly's on for Brighton.
Yeah.
I want to get Damien's view on this. This is a bit of a bugbear of mine. Why do you need to wear gloves playing soccer in 10 degrees? I do not get it at all, other than the fact that you want to look cooler than if you didn't wear them. It's not cold out there at all today. There's absolutely no need for Aaron Connolly to be wearing gloves today. Damien, if you were the manager, I'd be...
Johnny's already turned on this young crop of players.
I love Ida, but it's Connolly. I'm not sure about him. No, the thing... Remember when Roy Keane wouldn't sign... Welsh guy because of the WhatsApp.
Robbie
I was like, no, I
Savage,
can't be signing that. I'd struggle to sign a player who decides that he needs to wear gloves in 10 degrees. I don't know what Damien thinks of it.
Right, because sometimes the long sleeve jerseys seems to have gone out of football now. Like, nobody wears long sleeve jerseys anymore. Everyone wears short sleeve jerseys. And sometimes if you're sitting, on the bench or, in the warm-up, your hands get cold because your arms are cold. So some people feel better wearing them. They just feel warmer, really.
That's why they call it a warm-up.
Yeah, I know, but still, if you're playing in a short sleeve shirt and it's 8-9 degrees and you are running around, I get it, but some people might have poor circulation. I don't know, man. It's not something that I would get upset about, Johnny, if I'm being honest with you.
What's the problem? It's all about I want to look cool. I want to get into rough, dirty tackles here. Why are you wearing gloves? Nobody else is wearing gloves. It's not cold.
Is your bigger issue, Johnny, the short sleeve shirt and the gloves?
I prefer short sleeves. There's absolutely
He's wearing a long sleeve shirt as well.
I know this for a fact, right? If he runs around for 5 minutes, the gloves are getting uncomfortable because his body heat has gone up, and he shouldn't be wearing them. But he's wearing them because, well, I've had them on now, so I have to keep them on.
He's got the Under Armour thing on or whatever as well.
Duffy's not wearing gloves.
No. It's very old-fashioned of you, Johnny, to get upset about something like that.
You know me, Demo.
I thought Johnny was a modern man. Some people, are you saying he's not manly enough, John? Is he not manly enough?
It's nothing to do with that. It's about image.
You want him to have more old school quality.
It's about image rather than actually scoring goals and putting yourself about.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio. Off the Ball 2019 IMRO Radio Awards Sports Programme of the Year.
Salah takes the shot. Oh, Mo Salah with one of the goals of the season. Who will see their dreams turn into reality? Whose names will be etched in history forever?
Offtheball.com, best online publisher at the 2019 Spider Awards.
A big breaking story on offtheball.com for you this morning. We have the very latest on the Mayo leaks. We now know what went on in that secretive Mayo County Board meeting.
2019 Irish Sponsorship Awards Best Radio Sponsorship, OTB Super Value GAA Roadshows.
Well, when she comes back, get your arse back here, he said. Star is out sitting on the swing and Darren O'Sullivan is pushing him.
OTB Sports Radio, live online 24/7 on the Go Loud app. This is OTB Sports Radio.
The Sport Ireland campus Blanchardstown is the home of Irish sport, not just for our athletes, but for you and the community. For families, check out our kids camps, sport academies and birthday parties. For adults, why not join our newly refurbished gym with a 50-metre swimming pool, or book one of our world-class indoor or outdoor facilities, including our athletics track, sports pitches and courts. And for companies, check out our team building days, conference facilities and events. All this and more at sportirelandcampus.ie.
OTB AM.
Yeah, you're very welcome back this morning. Now, slightly conflicting reports in the Irish Independent and the Daily Mail about the speed at which we can expect some resolution to the ongoing crisis at the FAI. Philip Quinn's story in the back of the Mail is saying that the FAI are set for a bailout and the arrival of the directors. The FAI's bailout is set to be revealed this week, as well as the identities of the new independent directors. I think there's a consensus that it's going to be this week that we're going to see the details of the independent directors. But Philip Quinn is saying a provisional agreement has been reached between football chiefs and two of its senior stakeholders, the government and the banks. Kevin Doyle is reporting in the Irish Independent today, though, that government sources says that notion that it could bring proposals for a rescue package to Cabinet as early as this Thursday are absolute nonsense in inverted commas, and the FAI still has to implement a lot of reforms before taxpayers' money will be committed. So it looks like we're inching towards some kind of resolution to the crisis and a deal, the structure of which must have been discussed at this point, although when that might have happened is still a little bit unclear. We're given to understand that no deal is in place just as it stands at the moment. Stephen McGuinness of the PFAI is with us again this morning to kind of talk us through a little bit about what kind of information flow is heading in the direction of the stakeholders. Stephen, I'm sure you're reading this as much as we are and trying to piece together exactly where we are at the moment. What's your knowledge and how well briefed are you being kept by the government and indeed the FAI at this point in time?
We'll be kept more, the brief from government is probably more than the FAI at the moment. We met with Minister Ross and Minister Griffin on Friday for just short of 2 hours, the players, ourselves obviously and the clubs. And he seemed to be fairly confident that the independent directors would be in this week, the middle of this week. So obviously tomorrow seems to be the day that a lot of people are saying that the independent directors would be in. In regard to the financial package, he went 99% of the way to say that the FAI or that the government wouldn't allow the FAI to go into examinership or insolvency. So you would expect a deal of some sort. I don't see UEFA bailing out the FAI, so I think the only show in town is the government. I think it'd be unprecedented for UEFA to come in and bail out a federation. I think right across Europe, no federation has ever gone insolvent, but UEFA have never bailed anybody out, and I think it'd be a dangerous precedent for them to set if they did do it. So I think it really is in the government's court to resolve this. Now, on that basis, you would expect the government then, if they were going to do it, that they would have not control isn't the right word, but they would have people in place, and I think the word would be maybe some more senior civil servants, maybe part of the 4 independent directors that come in.
Okay, that's interesting. So that would make sense. That would give them oversight of financial, regulatory, legal issues that would be able to keep the government briefed on exactly what was happening from every board meeting, and on a more granular basis, they'd be getting a flow of documentation that then would at least keep the Department of Sport aware of what was happening at the FAI and with the government. Maybe it's not even the Department of Sport, maybe it's the Department of Finance, given that we're talking money here.
Correct, yeah. Now look, again, this is only merely speculation. I'd be close enough to it myself, and so would other stakeholders, but I mean, it would be very unlikely if the government, I would think if the government are going to underwrite this, that they wouldn't have some type of eyes on what the future of the FAI is. And I think what the Minister has seen since his comments in the Oireachtas is how much actually the League of Ireland people care about it. Like, I think people underestimate the support base that it's got. The interest in the country for the league, I think, was underestimated, and I think the reaction to maybe the comments of the league, if the FAI went up, the league would go. I think maybe caught them by surprise, and caught Minister Griffin maybe by surprise as well. And to give them credit, they've obviously given the opportunity for the clubs to come in and meet them. Some people are speculating as well about, like, on a bailout, where would the league be then? And I suppose from ourselves and the clubs, it's looking at, like, the FAI are still going to run the league for next year for sure. Like, but I think the long-term future of our league is that it does have to be independent of the FAI, and that's something obviously ourselves and the clubs we would very much want that. Now, like everything, Jerry, you can't just go and pull away straight away. We've under 13, 15, 17, 19 league now. It's not just about the two senior leagues. So it will be an interesting year ahead, and the main thing is to get this bailout done and to get the finances of the FAI sorted from a staff point of view. Basically cement the organisation, at least in the short term anyway, before we can then look from our own perspective on where the league is going to go. Did that meeting get into any of the details about how a bailout might actually function, about what it would look like and how it would work in terms of job security? Because in Philip Quinn's piece, he says that he thinks that there will be job losses are expected. He says, is the exact quote, at the cash-strapped association. Yeah, I suppose the meeting we had the other day was more around the League of Ireland and the clubs, and more around what questions we would want from UEFA when the Minister was going to meet them. I think it's probably inevitable, Jared. There's just over 200 staff in the FAI. I think it's unfortunately inevitable. I think some of the stuff the Minister maybe has said would be that the cuts, if you remember the last time that there was cuts, like it didn't seem fair if you were looking from the outside in at the FAI that everybody took the same percentage cut. So whether you were a guy on the minimum wage or you were a guy, the CEO on nearly 40,000, everybody took the same percentage cut. I think it'll probably be different, I'd say, and you would like to think the guys at the very top would be the ones shouldering more of the burden if financial cuts are required and if jobs are being lost. That the guys at the bottom, which is the ones who affected the most the last time, that would be the case this time. Yeah, okay. So, Stephen, in terms of the politics reporters, Kevin Doyle from the Indo is reporting that the government would need to see reform before they commit to funding. The pace of reform will quicken once you get the independent directors. So there's a bit of a jigsaw to be done here. Some bits need to fall into place. But you feel fairly confident, I would say, that this is moving in the right direction, that some resolution at least is on the table and there's a plan emerging. Yeah, I think it needs to be recognised as well that the current directors that are in now, from what I can see, are doing a good job. I think Paul Cook has done a good job. He's been straight. He's been direct. I think the other directors are guys and girls now from the SFAI who are independent of what went on before. So I think there's a better independent look on the board even currently, even though they're coming out of the same gene pool of the old council, which really does need to be looked at. But I think that looks different. I think the 4 independent directors are absolutely key, and they will drive the reform that's required. And like, see the problem with the culture of the FAI, like it's the senior management team at the very top is the one where there needs to be change as well. Because I mean, the board of the FAI, the old board, were rubber stampers. Really, they didn't really do the day-to-day stuff. And I think the people who are at the senior management end of things, that's where the focus has to be. And I think from the minister, as much he may have been criticised for maybe some tweets over the Christmas or whatever, I think he's been fairly consistent in his approach in regards to moving that old regime on. And with Donald Conway gone in the next 2 weeks, I think the old regime is pretty much gone. The council has to be reviewed, and as I said, senior management absolutely has to be looked at. And I think these independent directors and then the independent chair, and then ultimately, Jerry, the big one then is the CEO, which will probably take another couple of months to get somebody in that's going to direct the ship then long term. So I think these are all key moves that I think through all this, Jerry, in the end, I think we have a far more transparent, better governance and a better organisation. So the pain that we're going through, I think long term this will be far better for Irish football.
That's the thing. Like compared to the last time we spoke to you, when you were at pains to remind people that football was a livelihood for many, many people in this country and that this was at risk. You sound much more positive in the aftermath of the changes that have happened over the last, I want to say, 6 to 8 weeks even.
Yeah, I think where myself and other stakeholders see the difference is that the old guard is moving and has been moved. I think there's still a bit to go, but I think there's a feeling within the people within the game, and is that we are definitely seeing a new dawn of the FAI. There's still a bit to go, but I do definitely think that there's changes afoot. I think the independent directors, Jerry, are key. They're key to everything. The chair of the board will be key, obviously, and a new CEO. And with the government now, ultimately, if they make the bailout, I think they will be setting the terms and conditions without interfering too much, because it is funny when you hear UEFA and FIFA saying we don't want anybody from government dictating to our federations how it operates, but ultimately they're the ones going to bail this federation out. So the UEFA and FIFA can't have their cake and eat it as well. I mean, if the government are going to put the money in, they've got to have some eyes on what's going on here. You're not going to bail this thing out and then suddenly walk away and find yourself in 3 or 4 years time back to the same scenario again. So
no, and nor should they, because it is taxpayers' money at the end of the day. And but actually, look, maybe that's the right thing, and that this is the way that you force change through for an organisation that always had that shield of saying UEFA and FIFA won't allow us.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Jane. And I think you've got to give credit to Minister Ross for that. I mean, people can criticise whatever they want to criticise. As a stakeholder, somebody looking at the game and looking where the FAI was, and it was such a dictatorship. I mean, for obviously we were in the building, and it was running. And there's such good people in there. I mean, people only perceive the very top of it, but the reality on it is some brilliant people that walk in the building and work in Irish football. And I think they got forgotten about for a long, long time. And I think I said to you, I think the future's a lot brighter. And I think because the minister has ensured that a big clean-out was required, and he's nearly got that to a point that the next step are vital, and they need to be done well. But you've got to recognize, I think Paul Cook has done a really good job, and the current directors that are on the board have done a good job as well to get us to where we are. To get this 18 million from the banks, it needs to be guaranteed. But when that's in place, and I think you will see in a leaner organisation, unfortunately, I think there will be cuts. I don't think there's any way around that. But I think long term, as I said to you earlier, I think the game will be far healthier for it.
All right, Stephen McGuinness, PFI General Secretary, thanks very much for joining us this morning. That's interesting, and it sounds fairly positive. Like, there's obviously somebody who has had his battles with the FAI over the years, who's coming out and saying this is an organisation that certainly it sounds like they're going to be able to deal with in the future.
Yeah, it sounds a lot more positive than I actually expected. And like in fairness, as we were saying earlier on, Shane Ross clearly has learned from the bit of a rattling he got before Christmas, and has actually gone to meet the League of Ireland and those 40 delegates last week.
Time for something completely different, football related. Deal or no deal?
I signed for them after the Euros, and after my first day's training, I was driving home. I was actually thinking, regretting it. What have I done? Like I walked into a circus.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Phil is here, the ultimate arbiter of Deal or No Deal. Phil, how are you?
Very well, yeah.
We've no track record yet because there's been no deals.
No. Because we weren't doing it when the Minamino deal went through.
No.
So
that's it so far. This has been a crap transfer window. Come on,
January
transfer
always
window.
is.
Come on.
January's been a
Get it together.
dead rubber for the last few years.
For the last few years, but you think back to some of the great Januaries we had. Think back
No, don't be spoiling. We're going to do some nostalgia pieces on those. Don't.
Pre-VAR January transfer window was much better.
Right, Manchester United and Manchester City will clash in the League Cup tonight. We know this. Fresh reports also suggest they're set to battle it out for the signature of Tottenham Hotspur's Harry Winks. David Ornstein reports for The Athletic, the 23-year-old who has started 3 of Jose Mourinho's 9 Premier League matches to date is a target for both clubs. How good is Harry Winks? First question. Second question, should Spurs sell him? And what impact does he make if he goes to either Manchester club?
He is a decent player. I think hyped up a little bit because of where he's from. Yeah. Neat and tidy. And
what does he do?
He just tends to hold on to the ball, plays simple passes, keeps things ticking along nicely.
That's what we would have said about Xavi. Is he Xavi? Are you telling me he's the new Xavi? Is that what you're saying? He's the English Xavi?
He wouldn't do it as well as Xavi, but certainly if you think
Joe Allen?
He could be he's the English Xavi, but he would definitely be more suited to Manchester City because they obviously hold on to the ball a lot better.
Right.
But
maybe that's exactly what Man United wants. You know, somebody who will keep the ball as opposed to not know what to do with it.
I kind of feel though with Harry Winks, he keeps the ball when he's got more options, obviously.
Okay.
And
can he learn his craft beside Fred is the main question.
I mean, who can't?
Is Fred not redeeming himself at the moment?
He's good again?
Is he on the up? He was so low.
Sensational, Tommy says.
He was so low. So the only way was up.
That's the thing.
He's been grand.
The expectations are exactly, but the expectations for was he 50 million, 45 million?
Yeah.
Whatever.
So they were high, then they came down rock bottom, and now he's just above rock bottom.
The Athletic also reporting City have a list of 5 players that they're going to try and recruit to shore up their defence, so we'll keep an eye on that one. Uruguayan attacker Edinson Cavani has concluded a pre-contract agreement with Atletico Madrid, who he's set to join from PSG this summer when his contract expires. However, in a twist, L'Equipe report that news of the deal has moved Manchester United and Chelsea to potentially hijack that deal by buying the player before the contract ends, which obviously you can do. English interest could mean Atletico Madrid may either need to buy the attacker or risk losing him if another party puts significant money on the table before he's out of contract, which could be for, I don't know, for PSG, what is significant money? Is it 2 million? Is it 10 million? Is it 20 million? Who knows? What impact would the 32-year-old make in the Premier League?
He'd score a lot of goals. He's always, one thing with Cavani is he misses a lot of chances. Scores a lot of goals, but does miss chances. But people would say the fact that he gets into those positions, if he's playing for a team that creates...
For PSG, for God's sake.
Yeah. So I kind of think
he could play
Cavani,
for City?
Yeah, he'd be...
He couldn't play for Man United, though, because they're not creating enough chances.
No. You think of when he plays in the really, really big games. You know those games where PSG need somebody in the last 16, the quarterfinals of the Champions League.
He's going to miss one.
Cavani doesn't do it for you.
Huge fan of Chelsea's U-turn and all this. All of a sudden the transfer ban is lifted and the faith in Tammy Abraham has suddenly worn thin. It's all fake, kids. We're getting in the old guys.
It's more for backup to Tammy, is it?
Yeah, it is. They're getting rid of Giroud.
He's pressure off him.
He's better than Giroud.
Abraham?
Yeah.
Oh,
no.
Cavani.
Oh,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so they'll ship him out to feckless Villa and they'll get Cavani in.
Or will they?
I mean,
or will they?
God, I hope they don't. Nuno Espirito Santo has acknowledged that he could lose Raul Jimenez this month. The Mexican is reported to be close to the top of Manchester United's shopping list. They're also linked with a bid for Wolves' Ruben Neves. What impact would Neves or Jimenez have in Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's side?
If you were to ask me which one, if they could choose one, Neves.
Right.
That's where they need the biggest improvement is midfield. Because apart from Scott McTominay, they don't really have a midfield.
Why would Wolves sell these players now?
I don't think they will. I think what we will see, what will become a pattern, and already has become a pattern with Deal or No Deal, is Manchester United will get mentioned every day because it's...
Don't be giving away our secrets.
No, it's not.
Their box office.
It's a fairly foolproof plan if you're an agent. Just mention Manchester United and it gets other clubs interested.
Yeah.
Oh, well, if United are interested, we'll have a look. But Wolves are on the up. I honestly didn't think Wolves would have as good a season as they've had because of the Europa League. He tends to pick pretty much the same 11, but Adama Traore has kind of transformed them a little bit. They've given them something extra.
Yeah.
And the fact is, they know what their system is. They're so well drilled that even if they don't have the energy that they have most weeks, they can still get through games. But they still have the odd slip up in them, like losing to Watford.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, well, because they're not a title-winning team, and they're not a top 4 team.
Not yet, though. But they're
that's
not
the
far.
thing.
They're not far off.
The level of progress they're making, the speed at which they're making progress,
Yeah.
suggests that they could easily be one of those clubs who is top 6 fighting for top 4,
Yeah,
depending
absolutely.
on how the other teams do. As we told you, Manchester United's interest in James Maddison continues, but Sky Sports are reporting what we said last week. The club believe that there's little to no chance that move happens in this window, so we're parking James Maddison for now.
It's never going to happen. A January move. James Maddison is in 2 cup competitions. Brendan Rodgers, by the way, hasn't lost a cup game since Liverpool lost that FA Cup semi-final to Aston Villa.
Right.
That's obviously cleaned up the cup competitions in Scotland, into the last 4 of the League Cup, play Villa tomorrow, into the 4th round of the FA Cup. Maddison, no way is he leaving.
Sherwood was the
Yeah, Tactics 10, lost the final.
Wow. It's a long time ago. West Ham are keen to bring in Benfica's Portugal midfielder Gedson Fernandes, who has a £102 million release clause in his contract. They won't pay that much. They're trying to do a deal or no deal. Elsewhere, we did mention as well, Darren Randolph is back at West Ham. Is that a good development? Why is there a disconnect between his high approval rating with the Irish fans and his stop-start club career?
Yeah, see, I can't remember Randolph ever having a bad game for Ireland. But when I think of his club career, obviously he was championship keeper of the season last season. He's been injured for a lot of this season, so he hasn't... he played the first 12 games of the season.
Right.
Then he gets injured, comes back in, plays 2 games, injured again. So he would be the number 1 at Borough.
Yeah.
But he's going to be sitting on the bench. There's no way he's getting in ahead of Fabianski. Fabianski's stock went through the roof when he was injured because Roberto was so bad. And then they brought in David Martin, who really shouldn't have been in goal, but because Roberto was so bad, they had to do something, so they brought him in for that Chelsea game. I'd be very surprised if Randolph could displace Fabianski.
I presume it's a good deal from a financial perspective for him.
Yeah, I don't know what does that do for his international form, but as I said, you can't really question his international form. I honestly can't remember him having a bad game for Ireland.
What kind of contract is he getting at West Ham at this stage to sit on the bench? Is it or to be one of their 2 goalkeepers?
Like he's going to play cup competitions.
60 grand a week?
I'd say.
Is it? Is that what the standard?
I don't think so.
I would say maybe, like, are you talking half that up to 60 maybe? Like, what is Fabianski? Well, Fabianski's probably around 70, 80. I don't have the figures to hand. Like, it's like we're not talking about Darren Randolph coming from like a crap team here or coming from a bad position.
No, Borough must have been paying him 20 grand a week. No?
Borough, he'd be one of their better paid players, I'd say, because now they've kind of rechanged their model a bit.
Kevin Doyle and Stephen Hunt, they were on like 40 grand a week at Wolves back in the day. So surely you're now at West Ham with all the extra money that's flooded in. You're like, come on, West Ham, look at the stadium. I mean, minimum 40.
And you would have to think that it is probably a financial decision as well. He's well aware that Lucas Fabianski exists. So
he backs himself to beat
also as well. Like, no, he's certainly good enough, and he had games for West Ham where he was brilliant. I remember he played in that game at Anfield where he made an unbelievable save. Was it from Jordan Henderson? It was up there for save of the season. He played in the last game at Upton Park as well, that win over Manchester United. And he had certain games where, you could see this lad is a Premier League goalkeeper. But a bit like West Ham, his form was patchy. It was between him and Adrian.
Yeah.
And obviously he got out first when they knew Joe Hart was coming, because he said, if I can get out now, then I won't be sitting on the bench.
Yeah.
But here he is, he's going to be back. Now, he could prove us wrong and get in there, but I'd be surprised.
Wilfred Zaha has joined super agent Pini Zahavi's roster, reigniting speculation that he's desperate to leave Crystal Palace. The Israeli agent has represented the likes of Lewandowski and Carlos Tevez. If he had signed for Arsenal last summer, would he have made a difference?
Maybe.
He'd definitely done better than Nicola Pepe's done so far. It's early days for Pepe.
It is early days, and he's actually...
But Zaha would have...
He's actually had a good week, Nicolas Pepe.
Yeah.
How much is Pepe?
70 million.
Right.
They paid over installments, so they haven't paid off Nicolas Pepe just yet.
Most deals are done in installments. You're not told it.
This is super installments.
Right.
Big chunks still yet to pay by all accounts. I would definitely.
Zaha would have been the same price, or 80 million, would he?
Yeah, well, they were offering the last formal offer was 40 million.
Yeah, but see, that was the whole thing with Arsenal last summer was
they were just
offering. Only had about 40 or 50 million as a transfer budget. Then they get Pepe for 70, and then you're thinking, okay, they've obviously done some sort of a deal here. But I think Zaha would have made a bigger impact from the start at Arsenal. Whether Pepe, turns it around, maybe Arteta being in there will get the best out of him, but his best form for Lille was playing as a counter-attacker. So Arsenal don't tend to do that as much.
Maybe they're about to become a counter-attacking team because that's all they're able to do, right? They're not going to dominate
They
possession.
couldn't even get the ball back last night.
Did everybody just forget about the Manchester United game last week?
Luka Modric was a Manchester United target last summer. It's reported this morning he could be on his way to DC United. He's expected to earn a salary between $5 and $6 million, according to The Athletic. Should an English club hijack this deal and bring him to the Premier League?
He'd make most teams in the Premier League better, but if you're Luka Modric, you're thinking, I fancy a trip over to MLS, slower pace, this will suit me, and I get a nice paycheck for it.
He could do that anyway. He could have a season at United and then go to...
Yeah, I don't know, to go from Real Madrid to United, where the expectation at Madrid and United is almost the same.
It's not really anymore. It's not anymore, because the Man United fans understand that their team is rubbish. They do.
But they're not a great team at the moment. Whereas if he goes to DC United, no expectation at all.
Fair enough. According to The Sun, we've already done Scott Sinclair, and deal or no deal favourites Inter Milan could be about to disrupt Villa's emergency plans to bring Olivier Giroud to Birmingham to save their season. The Telegraph say the French star could be on his way to San Siro. Newcastle have also been linked with him. That's a good agent. What percentage chance do Aston Villa have of playing Premier League football next season?
You just asked a football question in a transfer market slot here, Ger. Got to recalibrate my thoughts, and I would say an okay chance. The big question around Aston Villa, and thankfully there is no legitimate concern that Jack Grealish will ever leave the club. But as long as you've got a player of his calibre in the side, there's always a chance that you're going to stay in the Premier League.
Yeah,
Now, if they get Olivier Giroud, that's a sort of January to May streak that is ripe for picking. Those sort of players like Papis Demba Cisse, who came into
Christophe Dugarry kept Birmingham up.
Those sort of players who go on the January to May runs, I think Olivier Giroud could be
best striker in the world for 3 weeks.
For 3 weeks, exactly. Olivier Giroud could have an absolutely magnificent 3 weeks at Aston Villa and save their Premier League bacon.
Could he?
Yes.
Could he?
I don't know why he'd go. Would he go to Inter, back to Conte, and say, "Remember you brought me in at Chelsea and then you left, and here I am stranded at Chelsea. Don't do it to me again."
Oof. Not going to do that, is he? Right. Inter maintained their perch at the top of Serie A last night, beating Napoli 3-1 on the road. The Mirror report they've made a 20 million bid of Christian Eriksen, but Conte would prefer to sign Arturo Vidal, who's 32. Arturo Vidal looks 32. Inter chief executive Giuseppe Maratta denies that talks are taking place with Spurs. Should an English club sneak in to try and 20 million for Christian Eriksen, right? Come on.
Yeah.
Spend it.
Absolutely. I have a feeling, though, if a Premier League club comes in, Daniel Levy will say, 20 million? Oh, no, 40 million.
And Christian Eriksen will go, I'm not going. Can he say that? Can he not go? Can he not sign?
Absolutely. He can just sit it out. What he can do is he can sit out on the bench for the rest of the season. Spurs lack creativity, and then Jose has to look at his bench and go, right, Christian, I have to bring you on again.
Yeah.
Because we're not going to score.
Okay, we're nearly out of time. Spurs are considering making a loan approach for Atletico Madrid. Thomas Lemar with a 60 million option to buy. Arsenal also linked with the French attacker who's out of favour. Simeone has publicly said his characteristics have always excited me, but he hasn't been able to live up to expectations. Diego, we all feel the same about certain people in our lives. Do you see him making an impact in the Premier League?
Has this not been the exact same story that's done the rounds?
Quicker answers, I said, Eoin.
No, because he's not going to go to the Premier League.
Right. No, exactly. Gossip columnist, all-star Adrian Rabiot, remember him from yesterday, could be on his way to Goodison Park. Tutto Sport say Everton have a €30 million bid knocked back, but the interest continues. He's only seen game time on 12 occasions since arriving at Juve in the summer. This is just a cut and paste from yesterday's. When asked about him, Juve manager Richard Sarri said, Rabiot, from a physical point of view, seems okay. He's growing, but always leaves a feeling of having greater potential than what he's expressing. He's on the right path. Could he get Everton on the right path?
No. This is exactly what Everton do not need. Watch them on Sunday, and they've so many players like that who have potential, but they're not putting it in. So don't get Rabio.
Ogurkan Kakir, you know this guy.
Goalkeeper.
He is. Turkey and Trabzonspor goalkeeper, 23. Liverpool want him. Bad news for Cavan Kelleher. Do they need another goalkeeper?
Yeah, they do. Obviously, Alisson got injured earlier this season. Adrian did very well when he replaced him, played well the other day, but it's the third choice keeper that they need.
And in stories that aren't possibly even stories, Gareth Bale could be on the move in this window. According to the Mirror, the MLS is his most likely destination. I don't believe that.
No.
Why would Real Madrid let him go to the MLS?
Look,
they want to get rid of him.
They'll get some money for him.
I still don't understand how Real Madrid allowed this to happen.
Arsenal should sign him. Everton should sign him. Spurs should sign him.
Should check out the golf course in the Maldives.
Like, exactly. The golf course in the Maldives looks pretty good. Glenn Whelan has today officially left Hearts by mutual agreement. He made 17 appearances during his 4-month spell. The club wishes Glenn well in the future. That didn't go so well.
No. And he was a regular.
Right. Where's he going to go? Back to Villa.
Like, we need to move the goalposts here. It's not Olivier Giroud who's going to save their season. It's going to be Glenn Whelan.
That's it for Deal or No Deal.
I signed for them after the Euros, and after my first day's training, I was driving home. I was actually thinking, regretting it, what have I done? Like I walked into a circus.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Ka-ching. That's it from us this Tuesday morning here on OTBM. Thanks very much for joining us. Off the Ball is going to be back on your radios tonight from 7 o'clock. You can subscribe to the OTB AM podcast. Fully timestamped, making it very easy to find exactly what you want from every morning's 2-hour show. If you missed anything this morning, the sports page is Killian Clark and why he's stepping away from the Cavan football panel for 2020. The latest on the FAI deal from Stephen McGuinness of the PFAI. Deal or No Deal. You'll find it on podcast on YouTube, and you can also cast it to your smart TV. Remember, OTB AM, Ireland's first and only sports breakfast show. We're back tomorrow morning from 7:30. We'll see you then. Good luck.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports